The night pressed down on the Montana territory like a burial shroud, thick and suffocating, the kind of darkness that swallowed sound and made even brave men check their rifles twice. October wind rattled through the canyon carrying the scent of pine and something else blood-fresh and metallic mixing with the rain that had just started to fall. Eliza Hartley rode hard through that darkness, her body bent low over the saddle, one hand pressed against her left shoulder where the fabric had turned black with what anyone watching would assume was blood. Her breathing came in sharp gasps, not from exertion, but from something deeper, the kind of terror that reaches into your chest and squeezes until you can't tell if you're dying or just wishing you were. The bundle clutched against her chest with her free arm looked like children's clothing soaked through with what appeared to be blood-dark stains spreading across the pale cotton fabric. In the sporadic lightning flashes, you could see her face young, maybe 28, but aged by something that had carved lines around her eyes, the kind of lines that come from squinting against more than just the sun. "Keep riding," she whispered to herself, or maybe to the horse, or maybe to the ghosts she was carrying. "Just keep riding, Eliza. Don't look back. Never look back." But she did look back just once, and in that moment, her face transformed into something primal, something beyond fear. It was the face of a mother who had lost everything, or thought she had, or wanted someone to believe she had. The distinction mattered, but not to anyone who would see her in the next few minutes. Samuel Brennan's ranch sat in a valley pocket protected on three sides by ridges that kept the worst of the winter winds at bay. He'd chosen this spot 5 years ago, after the war, after Mary and little James, after everything that mattered had been taken from him in one bloody night. The isolation wasn't just practical, it was necessary, like a wounded animal finding a cave to either heal or die in peace. He was sitting on his porch, unable to sleep as usual, whiskey untouched beside him, when he heard the horse. Not the steady clip-clop of someone who knew where they were going, but the stuttering, exhausted gait of an animal pushed beyond its limits. Sam stood slowly, his hand moving instinctively to the colt at his hip, a motion so practiced it required no thought. The rider materialized from the darkness, like something conjured from his nightmares. A figure slumped forward, barely holding the reins, rain streaming off a torn coat. But it was the bundle she carried that made Sam's breath catch. Children's clothes soaked in what looked like blood, held with the desperate grip of someone who couldn't let go, even in death. "Help!" The woman's voice cracked as she pulled the horse to a stop. "Please. They're dead. My babies are dead, but he's still coming. The man who killed them is still coming." She slid from the saddle before Sam could respond, her legs buckling as she hit the ground. He caught her before she fell, completely feeling the tremor running through her body, the kind of shaking that comes from the soul rather than the cold. "Easy now," Sam said, his voice rough from disuse. He rarely spoke these days, and when he did, the words came out like they'd been stored too long in the dark. "Let's get you inside." "No." Eliza gripped his shirt with surprising strength, her eyes wild and unfocused. "You don't understand. Walter Crenshaw, he's coming. He killed them because I tried to leave. Shot them right in front of me. Rose, she was only 7. Thomas was 5. Just 5 years old." The names hit Sam like physical blows. Children's names, children's ages. So close to what James had been when, "Ma'am, you're hurt." "Let me. This isn't my blood," Eliza said, looking down at her shoulder as if seeing it for the first time. "It's theirs. My baby's blood. I tried to stop it, press their clothes against the wounds, but there was so much blood." She held up the bundle, and in the lamplight from the house, Sam could see the dark stains more clearly. Something about them seemed off, but the woman's grief was so raw, so immediate, that he pushed the observation aside. "He's maybe an hour behind me." Eliza continued, her words tumbling over each other. "Maybe less. Walter Crenshaw, you've heard the name, bounty hunter turned killer. He was my husband, God help me. My husband. And when I finally found the courage to run, when I finally tried to save my children from what he'd become. She broke then, a sob tearing from her throat that sounded like something breaking inside her chest. Sam had heard that sound before from his own throat the night he'd found Mary and James. Come inside, he said more gently. We'll bar the doors, load the rifles. If this Walter comes, when he comes, Eliza corrected. He'll come. He always finds what he's hunting. Sam helped her to the house, noting how she moved injured, but not dying, exhausted, but still alert. She kept glancing back over her shoulder, and each time she did, her free hand moved to her hip where a gun should be, but wasn't. Inside the house was sparse but clean, the home of someone who'd pared life down to its essentials. Sam set Eliza in a chair by the fire and went to bar the door, his mind already running through defensive positions, counting ammunition, calculating angles of fire. Old habits from the war from before, when protecting people had been his purpose. The children, Eliza said, suddenly staring at the bundle in her lap. I should bury them. They deserve better than this. Ma'am, Eliza, was it? We'll take care of that come morning. Right now, you need to tell me about this Walter. How many men does he ride with? What kind of weapons? She looked up at him, and for just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Calculation, relief. It was gone before Sam could identify it. He travels alone usually, but he might have picked up help. He's got a Spencer rifle, 2 Navy Colts. He's fast, maybe the fastest I've ever seen. And he doesn't miss. She paused, then added quietly, he taught me to shoot back when I thought his darkness was strength. Before I learned the difference. Sam nodded, checking his own weapons, his mind already shifting into the cold clarity of coming violence. It had been 3 years since he'd killed anyone, 3 years of trying to forget what he was capable of. But looking at this woman, broken and desperate, caring what remained of her children, he felt something stir that he'd thought was dead. The need to protect, to stand between the innocent and the evil that hunted them. If he comes here, Sam said, checking the loads in his rifle, he'll find more than he bargained for. Eliza watched him prepare, noted the practiced efficiency, the calm that settled over him like armor. You've done this before. Killed men. Yes. Good, she said, and there was something hard in her voice now, something that matched the steel Sam was loading into his weapons. Because Walter Crenshaw needs killing, has needed it for a long time. Outside, the storm was building rain, hammering against the windows like something trying to get in. Or maybe Sam thought as he took position by the window, like something trying to warn them about what was coming. But Eliza knew something Sam didn't. Knew that the bundle in her arms contained clothes stained with berry juice and mud-knot blood. Knew that Rose and Thomas were alive, hidden in a cave 3 miles north, waiting for their mother to return, with the signal that it was safe. Knew that everything she'd told this man was both a lie and the absolute truth, because Walter was coming, and he would kill her children if he found them. The broken wedding ring in her pocket pressed against her hip, its bent metal, a reminder of the night she'd finally fought back, the night she'd decided her children deserved better than a life spent in fear. Now she just had to keep them alive long enough to have that life. And this man, this Samuel Brennan with his haunted eyes and ready weapons, might be the answer to prayers she'd stopped believing in years ago. Part 2. Boy Khan and Nan Vat. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving the world washed clean and gleaming under a pale October sun. Sam stood at the window, watching the horizon where the trail wound down from the northern ridge, his coffee growing cold in his hand. He'd stood guard all night, but Walter Crenshaw hadn't come. Not yet. Behind him, Eliza stirred in the chair where exhaustion had finally claimed her. She'd fought sleep for hours, jerking awake at every sound, her hand reaching for children who weren't there. Now in the morning light, Sam could see her more clearly, the sharp cheekbones that spoke of recent hunger, The calluses on her hands that didn't match the quality of her boots, the way she held herself, even in sleep, coiled and ready to run. No sign of him. Her voice came out rough, dried by grief, or the pretense of it. Nothing. Trail's clear as far as I can see. She stood slowly wincing, and Sam noticed how she favored her left side. The shoulder wound, or whatever it was, needed tending. But when he'd offered help last night, she'd refused with a fierceness that suggested more than simple pride. "I should go," Eliza said, but she didn't move toward the door. "I've brought danger to your door. That wasn't my intention." Wasn't it? Sam turned from the window, studying her with eyes that had seen too much deception to be easily fooled. A woman alone, children dead, violent man in pursuit. Seems like you'd be looking for help. Something flashed across her face, surprise maybe, or respect. Most men would have taken the story at face value. I'm not most men. Sam set down his coffee and moved closer, noting how she didn't back away. "That bundle you're carrying, the blood's wrong. Too dark, too thick. And you keep touching your hip where a gun should be, but you're not checking for a weapon. You're checking for something else. Maybe papers, maybe money, maybe truth." Eliza's laugh was bitter as winter wind. "Truth. Now there's a luxury I can't afford. Try me." She looked at him for a long moment, this man with scarred hands and careful movements, with a house too empty and eyes too knowing. The kind of man who'd learned that sometimes the only truth that matters is the one that keeps people alive. "My name is Eliza Hartley. That much is true. Walter Crenshaw is hunting me. That's also true. The rest." She moved to the window, looking north toward the ridgeline. "The rest depends on whether you're the kind of man who'd help a woman save her children, even if she lied to get through your door." Sam felt something shift in his chest, a recognition maybe, or just the echo of old pain. "Your children are alive." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. "Hidden. Safe for now. But Walter has trackers men who can find anyone. I needed a place to rest to plan. And I needed—" She turned to face him. "I needed someone who understands what it's like to lose everything, because that's what'll happen if Walter finds them." "How did you know about me?" "I didn't. But this house, it speaks of loss. One plate, one cup, but shadows where pictures used to hang. A child's carved horse on the mantel, dusty but still displayed. A woman's rocking chair that no one sits in." She gestured to each item as she spoke. "You lost them. Wife and child. Violence, not sickness. Men who've lost to violence move like you do, always ready for it to come back." Sam's jaw tightened. "That's a lot of assumption from furniture and dust." "Maybe, but I'm right, aren't I?" He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. The truth lived in the space between them, heavy as the morning air before rain. "Tell me about Walter," Sam said finally. The real story. Eliza moved back to the chair, sitting on its edge like she might need to run at any moment. "I was 17 when I married him. He was handsome, dangerous in that way that seems exciting when you're too young to know better. A bounty hunter with a reputation for always getting his man. What I didn't know was how he got them. The things he did to make them run, to make the chase more interesting." She pulled something from her pocket. Not the broken ring Sam had noticed, but a small leather journal worn and water-stained. "I started writing it down, the things he did, the families he destroyed, the women in towns we passed through, the men he killed after they'd surrendered just because he could. Why didn't you leave sooner?" "With what, where I had no money of my own, no family left, they died in a fever outbreak just after we married. And then the children came, and leaving meant taking them into danger. Staying meant teaching them to be quiet when Daddy came home drunk, teaching them to hide when his mood turned dark." Her voice broke slightly. "Teaching them that love wasn't supposed to hurt, even when everything in their world said different." Sam knew he should be suspicious, should question every word, verify every claim. But there was something in the way she held herself, the particular exhaustion that came from carrying fear for so long it had worn grooves in your soul. He'd seen it in the mirror for 3 years. "Where are they?" he asked. "Your children." "Safe. That's all you need to know for now." "If I'm going to help, are you—" She looked up at him, and for the first time since she'd arrived, he saw hope flickering behind the desperation. "Because I'll understand if you won't. This isn't your fight. You don't owe me anything." Sam thought of Mary's laugh, the way it had filled this house like sunlight through windows. Thought of James's small hands learning to hold a hammer, the concentration on his face as he'd tried to drive nails straight. Thought of the night they'd died, how he'd been in town buying supplies believing they were safe, because evil surely couldn't find them so far from anywhere. "I've got bacon and beans in the larder," he said. "Coffee's fresh or fresh enough. You should eat something." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting until I know more." He moved toward the kitchen area. "Walter Crenshaw, I've heard the name. Brought in the Garrison brothers last year, though the word was they didn't live to stand trial. They never do with Walter." Eliza followed him, her movements still cautious, but losing some of their coiled tension. "He makes sure they run, gives them hope, even helps them sometimes, points out an escape route. Then he hunts them down like rabbits. Says the fear makes them confess things, tell him about other criminals, other bounties. And the law allows this. The law looks the other way when the results are what they want. Dead outlaws don't require trials, don't escape from jail, don't have friends who might seek revenge." She accepted the plate he offered, though her hands shook slightly. "For 5 years, I watched him perfect his methods. Watched him stop seeing the men he hunted as human. Watched that same blindness creep into how he looked at me, at our children." Sam sat across from her, his own food untouched. "What made you run?" "Thomas, my youngest. He's 5, all curiosity and questions. One day he asked Walter why he hurt people, just like that innocent to sunrise. 'Papa, why do you hurt people?' And Walter looked at him like he was seeing him for the first time, like he was measuring him, calculating something. That night, I heard him tell his partner that the boy would need toughening up soon, need to learn the family business." She set down her fork, unable to continue eating. "I knew what that meant. I'd seen what Walter's father had done to him, the lessons that had carved out whatever good had once lived in him. I wasn't going to let that happen to my son, to either of my children. So you ran." "I planned. For 3 months I planned. Saved money when I could, though Walter counted every penny. Made connections in towns we passed through women who'd help other women in trouble. Taught the children our special song, Mockingbird, and what it meant when Mama sang it different ways." She touched her throat. "And then 2 nights ago, Walter came home covered in blood. Not his own. He'd killed a man who'd surrendered, killed him slow because he'd been bored. He was laughing about it." Sam had seen men like that in the war. Men who'd found something dark inside themselves and decided they liked the taste of it. They were the most dangerous kind because they had no limits, no line they wouldn't cross. "I drugged his whiskey," Eliza continued, "just enough to make him sleep heavy. Took the children and what money I could find along with his journal, the one where he keeps records of his kills, his methods. Evidence if I can ever get someone to listen. We made it 30 miles before he caught up. But your children are alive because I'm smarter than he thinks. When I heard him coming, I hid them, told them to wait for my signal. Then I made it look like they'd been hurt, like they'd died. Let him see me riding away with their bloody clothes, knowing he'd follow me instead of searching. A mother fleeing with her dead children is believable. A mother who abandoned her living ones isn't." Sam leaned back, processing this. "He'll figure it out eventually. Maybe. But by then, I'll have them far away. Or dead trying." She met his eyes directly. "I'm not asking you to fight my battle. Just let me rest here a few hours. Let me gather strength before I go back for them. That's all I'm asking." But Sam heard what she wasn't saying. Heard the exhaustion that went bone deep, the fear that she couldn't do this alone. He stood, walked to a cabinet, and pulled out something wrapped in oilcloth. Inside was a Colt Navy revolver, well maintained despite not being fired in years. "This was my wife's," he said, setting it on the table between them. "Mary learned to shoot because the frontier doesn't care if you're ready for its violence. She was good too, better than me at distances under 20 yards. Eliza looked at the gun but didn't touch it. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you're going to need more than determination to keep your children safe. And because—" He paused, trying to find words for something he'd never articulated. "Because evil men shouldn't be the only ones who know how to use violence. Sometimes good people need to speak that language too, if only to say, 'No more.'" She picked up the gun, then checking its weight, its balance. Her hands knew their way around a firearm, that much was clear. "Walter taught me to shoot. Said a woman alone was a target, but a woman with a gun was a problem most men would avoid. He was right about that much at least. Will you teach me to be better? Because I know how to hit what I aim at, but I don't know how to fight. Not really. Not the way that wins." Sam thought about the request. Teaching someone to fight to kill, if necessary, wasn't something done lightly. But looking at this woman, this mother trying to save her children from a monster she'd once loved, he saw something worth protecting, something worth arming. "Your children," he said. "They'll need food, water. How long can they wait?" I told them 3 days. If I don't come back by then, they're to walk to the nearest town and find the church. I gave Rose, she's 7, old enough to remember names of people who might help. 3 days. Sam moved to the window again, checking the horizon. "Walter will come here first. He'll track you this far at least. We need to be ready for that." "We? You said you weren't asking me to fight your battle, but you're in my house now, and I don't let evil men threaten people under my roof. Not anymore." He turned back to her. "So, yes, we. Now let's get that shoulder looked at properly, and then you're going to tell me everything about how Walter Crenshaw fights. Because when he comes, and he will come, I want him to find something he's never faced before. What's that? Someone protecting what matters instead of just hunting what runs." Eliza stood, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Sam saw her truly smile. It was small, fragile, but real. "You know, Mr. Brennan, when I saw your ranch from the ridge, something told me to come here. Now I know why." "Sam," he said. "Call me Sam. And save the gratitude until your children are safe. We've got work to do." The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor as Sam cleaned Eliza's shoulder wound. It wasn't from a bullet, as she'd implied, but from barbed wire, the tears suggesting she'd gone through a fence in desperation. She sat still as stone while he worked, but her eyes were somewhere else, sometime else. "You want to know about my ghosts?" she said suddenly. "I can see it in how you look at me. Like, recognizing like." Sam didn't deny it. His hands continued their careful work, applying the salve Doc Miller had given him years ago, the one that still smelled of pine tar and something medicinal. Ghosts have a way of showing themselves whether we want them to or not. "Rose has my mother's eyes," Eliza began her voice, taking on that distant quality of someone walking through memories. "Green as spring grass with little flecks of gold that catch the light. My mother died when I was 15. Consumption took her slow and mean. But before she went, she made me promise something. Don't let any man make you small, Eliza Jane. Don't let them take your voice away." She laughed, but it was brittle. "I broke that promise before her grave had even settled. Met Walter at her funeral of all places. He was there, hunting someone, always hunting someone, but he stopped when he saw me crying by her grave, gave me his handkerchief, told me grief looked noble on me. I was young enough to think that was romantic instead of what it really was, him seeing weakness he could use." Sam finished with the bandage, but didn't move away. Sometimes proximity helped with the telling, made it easier to let the words fall into the space between two people who understood pain. "Tell me about the beginning," he said. before it went dark. Oh, it was always dark. I just couldn't see it at first. Like when your eyes adjust to a dim room and suddenly you realize what you thought were shadows are actually stains. She pulled her shirt back into place, wincing slightly. Walter courted me for 3 weeks. 3 weeks was all it took for a 17-year-old girl to think she was in love. He brought me wildflowers, told me stories about his adventures, made me feel like I was part of something bigger than the small town where nothing ever happened except births and deaths and the occasional barn fire. She stood moving to the window, drawn like all haunted people to the sight of horizons and escape routes. The first time he hit me was our wedding night. I'd laughed at the wrong moment, interrupted a story he was telling about tracking a man through the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The back of his hand caught me across the mouth, split my lip. Then he kissed the blood away and told me I'd learn. Sam's hands clenched involuntarily. He knew the story, had heard variations of it too many times, but knowing didn't make it easier to hear. I did learn, Eliza continued. Learned to read his moods like weather patterns. Learned that whiskey made him mean, but rum made him sentimental. Learned that he liked me best when I was scared, but trying not to show it. It made him feel powerful, and Walter needed to feel powerful more than he needed air. The children came despite everything. Rose first when I was 19. I thought she'd change him, that holding his daughter would crack something open in his chest and let light in. And for a few weeks, it did. He'd hold her, and his face would soften, become almost human. But babies cry, and crying annoyed him, and annoyed Walter was dangerous Walter. She turned from the window, and Sam saw tears tracking down her face, though her voice remained steady. I became a wall between them. Every cry, every fuss, every moment that might trigger his anger, I absorbed. Took the hits meant for her, distracted him when his eyes went cold. Rose learned not to cry before she learned to walk, learned to be invisible before she learned her letters. And Thomas. Thomas was my miracle and my curse. The pregnancy was hard. I bled for weeks, thought I'd lose him. Walter was gone on a hunt chasing some gang up into Colorado. I prayed he'd stay away until after the birth, prayed I'd have time to heal before he came back. But he returned the night I went into labor. Eliza sat back down, her hands twisting in her lap. He was drunk on success, and whiskey had collected a big bounty. Found me in bed with the midwife struggling through a breech birth. You know what he did. Sat in the corner and laughed. Said pain was good for women, kept them humble. The midwife wanted to throw him out, but she saw the guns, saw what he was. So she did her work while he provided commentary, like it was a horse race. Sam poured her water from the pitcher, noticed how her hands shook taking it. You don't have to tell me all of it. Yes, I do. Because you need to understand what he is, what we're facing. Walter doesn't just hurt bodies, Sam. He gets into your mind, makes you complicit in your own destruction. She drank deeply, then continued. Thomas finally came blue and quiet. The midwife worked on him while I bled, and Walter placed bets with himself on whether the boy would live. When Thomas finally cried, Walter said, "Good. I'd hate to have wasted all that time waiting for nothing." The casual cruelty of it made Sam's stomach turn. He'd seen evil in the war, had done things himself that woke him at night, but there was something particularly vile about bringing that darkness into a birthing room. But Thomas lived, Eliza said, and now she smiled, real warmth breaking through the pain. Stubborn from his first breath, and careful like he knew from the start that making noise brought danger. He'd watch Walter with these big brown eyes, never crying when his father was home, saving his tears for when we were alone. You protected them. I tried. God, how I tried. Became an expert at reading danger signs. The way Walter cleaned his guns meant one kind of mood. The way he walked through the door meant another. I taught the children our games quiet as mice when Daddy was sleeping, statue time when his voice got sharp. We had signal songs, a whole language of survival. She stood again, pacing now, the memories driving her to movement. But you can't protect children from everything. They see, they absorb, they know. Rose started having nightmares when she was 4, would wake up screaming about the bad man coming. Walter would storm into her room furious at being woken, and she'd go silent mid-scream, like someone had cut her voice out. That silence was worse than any crying. Sam knew about that silence, had seen it in James near the end, when the boy had stopped laughing at his father's jokes, stopped asking to help with chores. Children knew when something was hunting them, even if they couldn't name it. "Tell me about your family," Eliza said suddenly. "It's only fair, isn't it, ghost for ghost?" Sam hesitated. He'd kept this locked away for 3 years, speaking of it to no one except Doc Miller, and then only because the man had saved his life and deserved to know why Sam had been trying so hard to die. Mary was a schoolteacher. He began, surprised at how easily her name came to his lips. Came west from Philadelphia because she'd read about the frontier needing education civilization. She was 22, full of fire and opinions about everything from women's suffrage to the proper way to teach arithmetic. I met her when she literally ran into my horse reading a book while walking, knocked herself clean into the mud. Despite everything, Eliza laughed. "She sounds formidable." She was. Taught me to read better, to think about things beyond the next harvest or the price of cattle. We married after 6 months, which was a scandal in town, too fast, they said. But when you know, you know. He moved to the mantel, picked up the small carved horse. James came a year later. Born during a thunderstorm, came out squalling like he was angry at the weather. Mary said he was going to be loud his whole life, make sure the world knew he was in it. How old? He was 6 when. Sam set the horse down carefully. We'd been happy for 5 years, built this place together, every board and nail. Mary planted that garden out back, said we needed beauty, along with practicality. James had just started learning his letters, though he preferred being outside with me, learning to ride to rope to read the sky for weather. He paused, and Eliza didn't push. She knew the weight of these stories, how they could crush you if you told them too fast. I'd gone to town for supplies. Ordinary trip, nothing special. The Henderson gang had been raiding up north, but they'd never come this far south. No reason to nothing here but small ranches and hard-working folks with little worth stealing. His voice went flat, emotionless, the only way to get through it. They came while I was gone. 6 men. Mary tried to protect James, I know, because I found them together, her body covering his. She'd shot 2 of them, the bodies were in the yard, but 4 against 1, and her trying to shield a child. Sam, I'm sorry. They didn't just kill them, they took their time, left messages on the walls in blood, left them displayed like trophies. I think they wanted whoever found them to know this wasn't about robbery. This was about enjoying the power to destroy. He turned to face her fully. I hunted them, all 4 who survived. Took me 8 months, but I found them. What I did to them, it didn't bring Mary and James back. Didn't even make me feel better. Just made me someone Mary wouldn't recognize, someone James would be afraid of. But you stopped after. Doc Miller stopped me. Found me in a saloon in Denver about to take on a fight I couldn't win because I'd decided dying mean was better than living empty. He'd known Mary had delivered James. He told me something I'll never forget. The dead don't want company, Sam. They want their stories to mean something. You dying angry just adds to the waste. Eliza moved close enough that he could smell the sage and trail dust on her. Is that why you're helping me, to make their stories mean something? Maybe. Or maybe because I know what it's like to have everything you love threatened by men who see suffering as entertainment. He met her eyes. Your husband, ex-husband, he's one of them. The kind who's forgotten other people are real, have souls that matter. I've killed men like that. And if he comes here, if he threatens you or those children, I'll kill him too. Just like that. Just like that. Some might say that makes me no better than him, but they'd be wrong. There's a difference between violence that protects and violence that predates. Mary taught me that. She had this speech about righteous anger, about how sometimes the only way to stop evil is to meet it with greater force, applied with precision and purpose. Eliza was quiet for a moment. Then, tell me about the night terrors, the ones that wake you. I heard you pacing last night, even while you were standing guard. Sam hadn't expected that, but somehow wasn't surprised she'd noticed. Every night at 2 a.m., that's when I got home that day, found them. My mind won't let go of that time, keeps circling back, like maybe if I relive it enough, it'll end different. Mine's 3 a.m., Eliza admitted. That's when Thomas had croup so bad I thought he'd die, and Walter wouldn't let me fetch the doctor. Said if the boy was too weak to survive on his own, better to know early. I held my baby while he fought for every breath, and my husband sat there cleaning his guns, humming. What happened? I finally just left. Walked out with Thomas in my arms, Walter yelling behind me that if I left, he'd hunt me down. But Thomas was turning blue, and suddenly his threats seemed less real than my baby dying. The doctor saved him, gave him medicine that opened his airways. When I came back, Walter beat me unconscious. But Thomas lived, and that's when I knew I could take the pain if it meant saving them. Sam understood that calculation, the mathematics of sacrifice. How long ago was that? 2 years. I've been planning ever since, studying him, learning his patterns. He thinks he's trained me well, broken me completely. But what he really did was teach me to be a ghost in my own life, to move without sound, to hide in plain sight. Skills that work both ways. And now you're using them against him. Now I'm using everything against him. His ego, his assumptions, his belief that I'm too weak and scared to really run. She pulled out the journal again. This has enough evidence to see him hanged 3 times over. Names, dates, descriptions of murders the law doesn't even know were murders. But getting someone to believe me to act on it before he kills me and takes the children, that's the challenge. Sam took the journal, flipped through pages of neat handwriting interspersed with what looked like dried bloodstains. This is evidence, but it's also a death warrant. He'll kill you just for taking it. He'll kill me anyway. At least this way his evil dies with him. They stood together in the fading light, 2 people carved by loss into something harder, but not yet brittle. Sam thought about Mary, how she'd say this was a chance to balance the scales a little. Thought about James, who'd always wanted to be a hero, like in the stories his mother read. Your children, Sam said finally, they're going to need more than just safety. They're going to need to learn they don't have to be quiet anymore. That's a luxury I can't even imagine yet. Then imagine it. Because that's what we're fighting for, not just their survival, but their chance to be loud, messy, normal children who don't have to read the room like their lives depend on it. Eliza's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different. These held hope. You really think that's possible? I think if we don't try, then men like Walter have already won. They've made the whole world into their hunting ground and everyone else into prey. But prey can become predator when cornered, and a mother protecting her young, that's the most dangerous creature God ever made. She laughed, unexpected and genuine. Walter used to say something similar, but he meant it as an insult. Said maternal instinct made women stupid predictable. Then he's never really seen it in action. Mary faced down 6 men to protect James, got 2 of them. If the odds had been better. He shrugged. Your Walter thinks he understands violence because he's good at causing it. But he's never faced someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to protect. That's a different kind of dangerous. The sun was setting, now painting the sky the color of old blood and new fire. Somewhere out there, 2 children waited in a cave for their mother to return. Somewhere closer, a man who'd forgotten how to be human was following tracks, confident in his superiority. He'll come tonight, Eliza said, certainty in her voice. He likes the dark, says it makes people honest, makes them show who they really are when they think no one can see. Then we should get ready. Sam. She touched his arm, the first voluntary contact she'd made. "Whatever happens, I want you to know you've given me something I didn't think I'd feel again." "What's that?" "The belief that there are still good men in the world, men who don't need to break things to feel whole." Sam covered her hand with his, felt the calluses and scars that matched his own. "And you've reminded me that surviving isn't the same as living, that there's still something worth fighting for besides revenge." They stood like that for a moment, two damaged souls recognizing something salvageable in each other. Then Sam stepped back, became all business again. "I'm going to teach you some things. How to use the house's defenses, where to position yourself for best advantage. And Eliza, when this is over, when your children are safe, you're going to teach them to sing, loud as they want. No more mockingbird songs as warnings. Real songs, the kind that celebrate instead of survival." That's a pretty dream, Sam Brennan. Then let's make it true. The moon was rising 3/4 full and bright enough to cast shadows when Sam heard what he'd been waiting for, the distant sound of a horse moving slow and careful down the north trail. He touched Eliza's shoulder where she stood by the back window, and she nodded. They'd prepared for this, walked through the scenarios, but reality always moved different than planning. "Remember," Sam whispered, "he knows you're here. Probably knows you're not alone, but he doesn't know who I am or what I'm capable of. That's our advantage." Eliza gripped Mary's Colt, checking the chambers one more time. "He'll try to talk first. Walter always liked an audience for his cleverness." They didn't have long to wait. The rider stopped just outside the ring of lamplight from the house, staying in that gray space between visible and hidden. For a long moment, nothing. Then a voice smooth as honey poured over broken glass. "Eliza, darling, I know you're in there. Saw your mare in the barn, poor thing's thrown a shoe. You always were careless with the details." Eliza's whole body tensed, but she held position. They'd agreed she wouldn't respond, wouldn't give Walter the satisfaction of her fear. "And you've found yourself a protector, haven't you?" Walter continued, amusement threading through his words. "Can smell the gun oil from here. Military man, I'd guess, from how the windows are covered. Probably thinks he's doing something noble, protecting a damsel in distress." Sam had positioned himself by the front door rifle, ready, but not visible through the window. He'd faced men like Walter before, men who used words like weapons, probing for weakness. "Should I tell him about you, darling?" Walter's voice was closer now, though still outside. "About the time in Amarillo when you smiled so sweet at that banker while I was working. About how you let him buy you tea. Touch your hand. I had to kill him, you know. Couldn't have people thinking my wife was available." Eliza's knuckles went white on the gun, but she held her position. Sam caught her eye, nodded encouragement. "Let him talk," the gesture said. "Let him reveal himself. Or maybe I should tell him about the children. Are they really dead, Eliza?" The blood on those clothes looked so theatrical. "You always did have a flair for drama. Remember when you pretended to be sick so you wouldn't have to visit my mother? Such a performance." The casual cruelty of it, discussing dead children like they were props in a play, made Sam's finger itch on his trigger. But not yet. Walter was still testing, still outside optimal range. "I'll make you a deal, whoever you are in there with my wife." Walter's voice took on a reasonable tone, the voice of a man discussing business. "Send her out, and I'll let you live. Simple as that. This isn't your fight, and I'm not an unreasonable man. She's my legal wife, after all. The law's on my side." Sam finally spoke, his voice carrying through the door. "The law doesn't extend to Murder Crenshaw, and a man who'd hurt children has no claim to anything but a bullet." Walter laughed genuine delight in the sound. "Oh, you're one of those. A believer in justice, in right and wrong. How refreshing. Tell me, Mr. Justice, did my wife mention she's wanted in 3 territories? Theft, they call it, though I call it taking my money without permission. She's quite the little criminal when she wants to be. Don't care what she's done. I care about what you're trying to do." "And what's that?" Hunt human beings like animals. Your wife told me about your methods. How you like to make them run, make them afraid. That ends tonight." There was silence for a moment. Then Walter's voice came from a different position. He was circling the house. "You know what I think? I think you're sweet on her. Lonely man, empty house, and along comes a pretty woman with a sad story. Tale as old as time. But here's the thing, friend, she's mine. Legal and binding before God and man. You forfeited any claim when you raised your hand to her." Sam moved too, keeping himself between Walter's voice and Eliza. "When you made your children afraid of their own father." "My children." Walter's voice went cold, all pretense of friendliness gone. "Where are they, Eliza? I know they're not dead. Found the cave where you hid them, found the little Dolly Rose left behind. They can't have gone far. 2 children alone and afraid, probably crying for their mama." Eliza made a sound quickly suppressed, but Walter heard it. His laugh was ugly now. "There she is. There's my songbird. Did you really think you could run from me after everything I've taught you about tracking, about leaving signs? You might as well have drawn me a map." "She's not running anymore," Sam said, moving to the window where he could get a partial view of the yard. "She's done being prey." "Is that so? Tell me, did she mention she's pregnant?" "No, oh, Eliza, keeping secrets from your new friend. About 3 months along, I'd say. My child, of course. Another little Crenshaw to carry on the family tradition." Sam glanced at Eliza, saw the truth in her stricken face. She hadn't mentioned it. Probably hadn't thought it mattered to their immediate survival, but it changed things, added another layer of complexity to an already dangerous situation. "Makes no difference," Sam said, though it did. "She's under my protection. You want her, you go through me." "Gladly." The window exploded inward glass, showering across the floor. Sam had expected it was already moving, pulling Eliza down and away. The second shot came immediately after punching through the wall where Eliza had been standing. "That's your warning," Walter called. "Next one doesn't miss. Send her out or I'll burn this place down around you. Wouldn't be the first time I've smoked out prey." Sam counted to 3, then fired back his rifle shot, taking out the water barrel Walter had been using for cover. The man rolled away faster than expected and returned fire. The battle had begun, but this was just the opening exchange. "Eliza," Sam said quietly, "back door. Remember what we discussed." She nodded and started crawling toward the kitchen. Walter must have anticipated it because his voice rang out again. "Running to the root cellar, darling. Already checked it. Nice hiding spot, but not nice enough." Sam fired again, forcing Walter to move, buying Eliza time. But instead of the root cellar, she slipped out the back and circled wide, using the moon-cast shadows they'd mapped earlier. Sam kept Walter's attention with sporadic fire, making him think they were pinned down. "You know what your mistake was," Walter called out, reloading. "You let her tell you a story. Made you the hero, her the victim. But Eliza's no victim. She's a survivor, and survivors do whatever it takes. She's using you, friend. The moment she doesn't need you anymore, she'll be gone." "Maybe," Sam admitted loud enough to be heard. "But right now, what she needs is her children safe. And what I need is men like you to stop wasting the oxygen better folks could be breathing." Walter's laugh was cut short by a shot from behind him. Eliza had circled around, found position near the tool shed. Her shot went wide, but it forced Walter to realize he was now between 2 guns. "Clever girl." He called out approval in his voice. "I did teach you well, but you're forgetting something, darling. I know you. Know how you think, how you move." He fired toward the shed, the bullet splintering wood inches from where Eliza crouched. "Know that you flinch just before you pull the trigger." Sam used the distraction to move to a better position, but Walter was already adjusting, keeping both of them in his peripheral vision. The man was good, had to give him that, but good wasn't the same as desperate, and Sam had learned the difference in the war. "Tell you what," Walter said, his voice carrying that false reasonableness again. "Let's make this interesting. Eliza, you come out, we leave together, and I promise not to kill your new friend. Hell, I'll even let you see the children one last time before I deal with them. That's generous considering." "Considering what?" Eliza called back, her voice steady despite everything. "Considering you stole from me. My money, my children, my property. A man's got a right to what's his." "I'm not property." Eliza stood, suddenly exposing herself, but with her gun raised and steady. "The children aren't property. We're human beings, Walter. People you're supposed to protect, not hunt." "Human beings." Walter emerged from his own cover, his gun's holstered hands spread wide in a mockery of peace. "Darling, you became mine the day you said, 'I do.' Every breath you take, every thought you have, every child you bear, all mine by law and by right." Sam had a clear shot, but held fire. Something was happening here, something that needed to play out. Eliza stepped fully into the moonlight. Mary's Colt held steady. "I was 17, she said. "A child myself. You saw a grieving girl and thought, perfect victim. But I'm not that girl anymore, Walter. I'm the woman who survived you, the mother who protected her children from you, the person who's going to stop you from ever hurting anyone again." "You stop me." Walter laughed, but there was an edge to it now. "You can't even load that gun properly, darling. You always put one chamber light, afraid of accidents. Means you've got 5 shots, not 6. And you've fired once already." He was moving as he talked, slow and easy, like approaching a spooked horse. Sam shifted position to maintain his angle, but Walter was smart, keeping Eliza between them. 4 shots left, Walter continued. "And your hands are shaking. See, can't hold steady when it counts. That's why you missed from the shed. That's why you'll miss now." But Eliza's hands weren't shaking. Sam realized it at the same moment Walter did. She was doing it deliberately, making herself seem weaker than she was. The gun came up smooth and fast, and her first shot caught Walter in the shoulder, spinning him around. "That's for every time you hit me," she said, her voice cold as winter stone. Walter's hand went to his gun, but Sam's rifle shot sent it spinning away. The man clutched his bleeding shoulder, genuine shock on his face. "You shot me. You actually shot me. Second lesson you taught me," Eliza said, advancing. "Never wound what you can kill clean. But I'm not you, Walter. I'm giving you a chance you never gave anyone. Leave. Now. Don't look for us. Don't follow. Just disappear." Walter's face contorted rage, replacing shock. "You think this ends it? You think I won't heal up and come back? I'll find those brats, and when I do..." The second shot was Sam's. It took Walter in the chest, dropping him to his knees. The man looked down at the spreading red stain, then up at Sam, who'd stepped out of the shadows. "You don't threaten children," Sam said simply. "Not in front of me. Not ever." Walter tried to speak, but blood bubbled from his lips. He reached toward Eliza, whether in plea or threat, they'd never know. He fell forward, twitched once, and went still. Eliza stood frozen, the gun still raised, pointing at nothing. Sam approached slowly, gently took the weapon from her hands. "It's done," he said softly. "He's gone. I thought I'd feel different, relieved maybe, or guilty, but I just feel empty. That's shock. It'll pass." Sam checked Walter's body, confirming what they already knew. "We need to move him deal with this before..." "Mama." The small voice came from the tree line. Rose stood there, 7 years old, and trembling, her little brother Thomas clutching her hand. They'd come despite being told to wait, drawn by gunfire and the desperate need to know their mother's fate. Oh, God! Eliza ran to them, falling to her knees and pulling them close. "My babies, my sweet babies. You're supposed to be hidden. You're supposed to be safe." "We heard shots," Rose said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. "Thomas was crying. He said the bad man got you." "No, sweetheart. The bad man's gone. He can't hurt us anymore." Thomas pulled back slightly, his 5-year-old eyes too knowing. "Is he dead?" Eliza looked at Sam over her children's heads, seeking guidance. He nodded slightly. Truth, however hard, was better than lies that might unravel. Yes, she told her son. He's dead. He won't ever come back. Good, Thomas said with a firmness that no 5-year-old should possess. Then softer, does this mean we can sing loud now? The question broke something in Eliza. She laughed and cried simultaneously, holding her children like she'd never let go. Yes, baby, we can sing as loud as we want. Sam watched them, this broken family beginning to mend, and felt something shift in his chest. Not healing exactly, but the possibility of it. Mary would have loved this woman's strength, would have admired how she'd protected what mattered most. You should come inside, he said finally. All of you. It's cold, and we have things to figure out. Eliza stood, each child holding one of her hands. Sam, this is Rose and Thomas. Children, this is Mr. Brennan. He helped Mama. He kept us safe. Rose studied him with those green eyes Eliza had described, old soul eyes that had seen too much. Are you going to be our new papa? Rose. Eliza's face flushed. That's not Mr. Brennan, was just... I'm a friend, Sam said, crouching down to the children's level. Someone who helps when help is needed. Right now, you all need food, warmth, and sleep. We can figure out the rest tomorrow. Thomas stepped forward, surprising everyone. Mama says we're not supposed to trust strange men, but you killed the bad man. That makes you good. Right. Sam thought about how to answer that, how to explain the complexity of violence and protection to a child who'd lived in fear. It makes me someone who won't let bad people hurt children. That's all you need to know for now. Okay. Thomas seemed satisfied with that. Do you have cookies? The ordinary question after so much violence was jarring and perfect. Sam actually smiled, remembering James asking the same thing at inappropriate moments. No cookies, but I've got molasses candy. That work. Both children nodded eagerly, and just like that, the spell was broken. They were just children again, focused on the promise of sweets rather than the body cooling in the yard. As Sam led them inside, Eliza touched his arm. The journal, she whispered. Walter's journal. It was in his saddlebags. Evidence of his crimes, but also proof that you had cause to run to defend yourself. Sam understood. I'll get it. You take care of them. Inside the house that had felt empty for 3 years suddenly felt full. The children explored cautiously, Thomas immediately drawn to the carved horse on the mantel, while Rose examined the books on the shelf. These were yours, Rose said to Sam, holding up a primer. When you were little. My sons, Sam admitted. He was learning his letters. The child's directness was startling. He died 3 years ago. Rose nodded solemnly, like death was an old acquaintance. I'm sorry. Death is hard. Mama cried when Grandma died. Is that why you helped us? Because you missed having children here? Rose, that's enough questions. Eliza intervened, but Sam held up a hand. Maybe, he told the girl honestly. Or maybe because your mama reminded me that there are still fights worth fighting. Rose seemed to consider this, then made a decision. She walked over and hugged Sam's leg quick and fierce. Thank you for fighting for us. Sam's throat closed up. He managed to pat the girl's head awkwardly before she darted away to examine something else. Eliza watched it all with eyes that saw too much. We can't stay, she said quietly. You know that, right? Come morning, we need to move on. There'll be questions about Walter, about us being here. Maybe, or maybe you could stay a few days. Rest plan, figure out where you're going. The sheriff in town is a good man. Doc Miller, too. They'll understand what happened here. And if they don't, then I'll make them understand. Sam's voice carried the quiet authority of someone who'd earned respect through pain. Walter Crenshaw was a killer. Everyone knew it, even if the law looked away. His death was justice, not murder. Thomas had found the molasses Candy was sharing with his sister. They sat by the fire, sugar, making them brave and silly, starting to giggle at nothing. It was the most beautiful sound Sam had heard in 3 years. They haven't laughed like that in... Eliza trailed off, watching them. I can't remember when. They're safe now. Children know when the danger's really past. They feel it. Do they? Eliza turned to him. Then why do I still feel like running? Because you've been running so long, you forgot how to stand still. But you stood still tonight. Faced him down, protected what mattered. That took more courage than any running. She was quiet for a moment, watching her children. Then, that thing Walter said, about me being pregnant. It's true. Sam had wondered if she'd acknowledge it. I figured. Does it change things? Your offer of help? No. If anything, it makes it more important. That child deserves a chance at a different life, one where fear isn't the first thing it learns. You're a good man, Sam Brennan. I'm a man trying to be good. There's a difference. Before she could respond, Thomas called out, Mama, look, books about horses. Can Mr. Sam teach me to ride? The simple question, the assumption of a future of time to learn and grow, hung in the air between the adults. It was Rose who answered for them all. Of course he can, she said with 7-year-old certainty. That's what friends do. They teach each other things. And in that moment, in a house that had known too much sorrow with a dead man in the yard and an uncertain future ahead, something new began. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The chance for broken people to help each other heal, for children to learn joy again, for empty houses to become homes. The moon continued its journey across the sky, impartial witness to violence and tenderness alike. And somewhere in the distance, a mockingbird began to sing, not as warning, but as welcome to the coming dawn. Dawn came gray and uncertain, matching the mood in the house. Sam had dealt with Walter's body in the night, wrapping it in canvas and storing it in the barn until they could bring the sheriff. The children had finally fallen asleep by the fire, curled together like puppies, their faces peaceful in a way that made Eliza's chest ache. We need to talk about what comes next, Sam said, pouring coffee that neither of them really wanted, but both needed. Sheriff Morrison will need to be told. The body, the circumstances, it can't be hidden. I know. Eliza stood by the window, watching the sun creep over the ridge. I've been running from the law as much as from Walter. He made sure of that, filed complaints in 3 territories about theft abandonment. Made me the criminal so no one would believe me if I tried to tell the truth. The journal helps, his own words condemning him. Maybe. Or maybe they'll say, I stole that too, made it all up. She turned to face him, exhaustion making her look younger and older simultaneously. I can't risk my children being taken away. Foster homes, orphanages, they'd be separated, lost in the system. Sam set down his cup decision, crystallizing in his mind. Then we make it impossible for them to take the children. How? We get married. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Eliza stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What? Think about it practical like. A widow with children running from her dead husband's crimes, that's suspicious. But a married woman with a respectable rancher for a husband whose previous husband died attacking her new family, that's a different story entirely. You're serious. It wasn't a question. She could see it in his face, the same expression he'd worn when preparing to face Walter. You'd marry a stranger to protect children you just met. You're not exactly a stranger anymore. We've shared ghosts face death together. I've known people for years who I trust less than I trust you after one night. Eliza moved away from the window, pacing like she had when telling her story. This is insane. People don't just decide to marry like deciding what to have for breakfast, don't they? Your parents probably spent months courting proper and careful, and where did that lead? You married Walter after 3 weeks of romance, and look how that ended. Maybe choosing based on practical need and mutual respect isn't the worst foundation for a marriage. Sam, I'm pregnant with another man's child, a dead man's child. A child who will need a father's name, a stable home. I can provide that. Why? She stopped pacing, faced him directly. What do you get out of this arrangement? Sam was quiet for a moment, looking at the children sleeping by the fire. For 3 years, I've lived in this house like a ghost myself, going through the motions, existing, but not living. Last night, protecting you and them, I felt something I thought was dead. Purpose, maybe even hope. That's not enough reason to bind yourself to a ready-made family with all our complications. Isn't it? He stood moved closer to her, but not crowding. Eliza, I'm 41 years old. I've had my great love lost her, and I know I'll never have that again. But maybe I can have something different. Partnership, family, the sound of children in this house, again, even if they're not mine by blood. And me. What am I to you in this arrangement? A friend, a partner, someone I respect who needs help I can provide. In time, maybe more, or maybe not, but either way, protected, safe, given time to heal and decide what you want without running. Rose stirred by the fire, mumbling something in her sleep. Both adults watched her settle again, the moment highlighting what was really at stake. The sheriff, Eliza said slowly. Would he perform the ceremony? He could. Or Reverend Mills, both good men who'd understand the necessity. And if I say no, if we take our chances with the truth, then I'll still help you however I can. This isn't an ultimatum, Eliza. It's an option. Maybe a crazy one, but sometimes crazy is what the situation calls for. She laughed short and sharp. You know what's truly insane? I'm actually considering it. A marriage of convenience to a man I met less than 12 hours ago. 15 hours, actually. And we've covered more ground in those hours than most people do in months of courting. What would we tell people? The children. The truth mostly. That you were in danger, that I helped, that we decided to face the future together. Children adapt to truth better than lies. And the town. Well, they've seen stranger things. Thomas woke then sitting up with his hair sticking every direction. Mama, Mr. Sam, is it morning? It is, sweetheart, Eliza said, going to him. Are you hungry? Yes. Can we have eggs? Mr. Sam, do you have chickens? I do. Want to help me gather eggs? The boy nodded eagerly, then paused. Is it safe to go outside? The question broke Sam's heart a little. No child should have to ask that. It's safe. No one's going to hurt you here. Thomas studied him with those 2 old eyes. Promise. I promise. As the boy ran to get his shoes, Eliza touched Sam's arm. You can't promise that. Safety. You can't guarantee it. No. But I can promise to stand between them and danger, to teach them to defend themselves, to give them the best chance possible. And if I bring danger to your door, Walter had friends associates. They might come looking. Then they'll find more than they bargained for. I'm not the same man who lost his family because he wasn't prepared. I won't make those mistakes again. Rose was awake now, watching them with those sharp green eyes. Are you and Mama arguing? No, sweetheart, Eliza said. We're discussing what Sam crouched down to her level. How to keep you all safe and together. That's the most important thing, right? Rose nodded, then surprised them both. Mama, are you going to marry Mr. Sam because Thomas thinks you should? He said Mr. Sam has horses and candy and doesn't hit people unless they're bad. Thomas said all that, did he? Eliza's voice was carefully neutral. Well, he said some of it. I figured out the rest. Rose looked between them. It would be okay, you know, if you married him. He's sad like us, but in a quiet way. Maybe we could all be less sad together. Out of the mouths of babes, Sam thought. He stood, gave Eliza a meaningful look. I'll take Thomas for those eggs. You think on it. Whatever you decide, we need to send word to town by noon. Outside, Thomas peppered Sam with questions about the chickens, the horses, the barn. Normal little boy. Questions that made the morning feel almost ordinary. But Sam kept scanning the horizon, old habits asserting themselves. Protecting this family, whether as friend or husband, was going to require vigilance. Mr. Sam, Thomas had stopped by the chicken coop. Are you going to be our papa now? Do you want me to be? The boy considered this seriously. Would you teach me to ride and shoot, but only for protecting, not for hurting? If your mama agrees, yes. And would you read to us at night? Mama does sometimes, but she gets tired. I could do that. Thomas nodded, decision made in the simple way of children. Then yes, you can be our papa, but you have to be nice to mama. No yelling or hitting or making her cry. I would never do those things. Good, because I'm little now, but I won't always be. And I remember everything. The threat from a 5-year-old should have been amusing, but Sam heard the steel underneath. This child had seen too much to ever be truly innocent again. When they returned with the eggs, they found Eliza and Rose at the table, the journal between them. Rose was pointing at something, her face serious. That's evidence, she was saying with 7-year-old authority. In the books, evidence is what makes the judge believe the truth. You read law books? Sam asked, amused despite everything. I read everything, Rose said simply. Mama taught me. She said reading was freedom because no one can take away what's in your head. Your mama's right. Eliza stood, her face composed, but her eyes showing the war she'd been fighting with herself. Sam, could we speak privately? They stepped onto the porch, leaving the children to their breakfast preparations. The morning was warming, promising a clear day. I've made my decision, Eliza said without preamble, but I have conditions. I'm listening. First, this is a partnership. I'm not becoming property again, not answering to another man's whims. We make decisions together, especially about the children. Agreed. Second, I need time. Before anything resembling a real marriage, I need to heal, to remember who I am when I'm not afraid. Take all the time you need. I'm not expecting anything from you, Eliza. This is about protection, not possession. Third, if it doesn't work, if we find we can't live together peacefully, we find a way to separate that doesn't harm the children or leave me vulnerable legally. Fair enough. She took a breath. Then yes, I'll marry you. God help us both, but yes. Sam felt something ease in his chest. Not joy exactly, but relief. Purpose. We'll ride to town this afternoon. Sheriff Morrison can perform the ceremony, and Doc Miller can witness. Keep it simple, legal binding. What about the children? They should understand what's happening. We'll tell them together. Make it clear this is about keeping the family safe and together. Eliza laughed, shaky but genuine. Family. We're about to become a family based on 15 hours of acquaintance and mutual desperation. Stranger foundations have built stronger houses. Is that experience talking or hope? Maybe both. They stood there, two damaged souls about to bind themselves together for reasons that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with survival. But sometimes Sam thought survival was its own form of love, the choice to keep going, to protect what mattered, to build something from ruins. Mama, Rose stood in the doorway. Thomas spilled the eggs. He did not. Thomas's voice carried from inside. I just dropped one, maybe 2. 3. Rose corrected. But Mr. Sam, we saved most of them. The ordinary domesticity of the moment made the extraordinary decision feel somehow right. This was what they were choosing, not just safety, but the chance for normal problems, childhood squabbles, spilled eggs, and shared meals. Then let's have breakfast, Sam said, ushering them all inside. We've got a big day ahead. As Eliza helped Thomas clean up the egg mess, she caught Sam's eye. You sure about this? Once it's done, there's no going back easy. I haven't been sure of anything since the night I lost them, Sam said quietly. But this feels like the first right thing I've done in 3 years. Even though I'm using you for protection, for legitimacy, aren't I using you too? For purpose, for family, for a reason to keep going. Maybe that's what partnership is. 2 people using each other for the right reasons. Before she could respond, Sheriff Morrison's voice called from outside. Sam Brennan. Got word there was trouble out here last night." They looked at each other, the moment of decision crystallizing. Sam nodded to Eliza, then went to the door. "Sheriff, come in. We've got a situation to discuss and a proposal to make." Morrison entered his sharp eyes, taking in the scene, the woman, the children, the evidence of last night's violence, hastily cleaned, but still visible to a lawman's eye. This about Walter Crenshaw, he asked directly, because his horse was found wandering near Miller's Creek. "It's about justice," Sam said, "and about protecting innocence from a man who forgot what that word meant." "He's dead," Eliza said, stepping forward. "He came here hunting me and my children." Sam stopped him. "And now," she took a breath, made the choice that would change everything. "Now Sam and I need you to perform a marriage ceremony. Today. Before questions get asked that might hurt these children." Morrison looked between them, understanding dawning. "That's mighty sudden." "Sometimes sudden is what's needed," Sam said. "You know my reputation, Sheriff. You know I wouldn't ask if it wasn't necessary." The sheriff studied them all for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but I'll need to see the body take statements. Everything legal and proper." "Of course. And the marriage. You're both certain." Eliza moved to stand beside Sam, not touching, but united in purpose. "We're certain." Rose and Thomas watched it all with wide eyes, understanding that something important was happening, even if they didn't grasp all the implications. "Mama," Thomas whispered, "are we staying?" "Yes, baby," Eliza said, her voice stronger than she felt. "We're staying." And with those words, the decision was made. Whatever came next, doubt, difficulty, maybe even love would be faced together. A family forged not by blood or romance, but by choice and necessity, held together by the shared understanding that sometimes the most important promises are the ones made to relative strangers in desperate hours, when the only thing that matters is keeping the innocent safe from the dark. On the first week of marriage was like learning to dance with a stranger, while the floor kept shifting beneath their feet. Sam and Eliza moved around each other with careful politeness, each hyper-aware of the other's presence, in spaces that had been solitary for so long. The children, however, adapted with the resilience of youth, already calling the ranch home before the sun set on their second day. "Mr. Sam," Thomas said that first morning after the quiet ceremony in town, "do I call you Papa now?" Sam had been mucking out stalls, the familiar work, a comfort after the upheaval of recent days. He paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "You call me whatever feels right to you, son." The boy considered this, his 5-year-old face serious. "Maybe I'll practice with Mr. Sam and work up to Papa." "That's wise planning." Thomas beamed, then promptly stepped in a pile of horse manure. His dismayed expression made Sam laugh, the first real laugh in years, and the sound brought Eliza running from the house, certain something was wrong. "He's fine," Sam assured her, still chuckling as Thomas scraped his boot with dramatic disgust. "Just learning that ranch life isn't all horse rides and sunset views." Eliza's relief transformed into something else as she watched Sam help Thomas clean his boot patient with the boy's complaints. This was what she had hoped for, but hadn't dared expect kindness in small moments, the ordinary tenderness that Walter had never shown. The house itself seemed to wake from a long sleep. Rose had claimed the small room that had been James's, though Sam had to steel himself the first time he saw her arranging her few possessions on the shelves he'd built for his son. She'd asked permission first formal as a little adult. "Is it okay if I put my books here? I promise to be careful with the room." "It's your room now." Sam had managed his voice only slightly rough. "Make it however you like." She'd nodded solemnly, then surprised him by adding, "The boy who lived here before he had good taste. The view from this window is perfect for reading." Thomas took the even smaller storage room, delighted to have any space that was truly his. Within days, he'd constructed elaborate fortresses from feed sacks and old blankets, declaring himself sheriff of the hay bale territory. Eliza and Sam's sleeping arrangements were more complicated. The house had only one proper bedroom besides the children's rooms. That first night, Sam had offered to sleep in the barn, but Eliza had shaken her head. That'll raise questions if anyone visits. We need to appear normal. So they'd compromised. Sam strung a curtain down the middle of the bedroom, creating 2 spaces. It was awkward hearing each other breathe in the darkness, but it maintained the fiction they needed while respecting the boundaries Eliza had set. "This is strange," she'd whispered that first night. Which part? Sam had responded, his voice dry. The sudden marriage, the instant family, or the curtain between 2 strangers playing, married, all of it. But she'd been smiling. He could hear it in her voice. The daily routines came easier. Eliza took over the cooking, her meals, revealing experience feeding a family on limited resources. She could make a single chicken feed, 6 stretch vegetables with wild herbs. She gathered bake bread that filled the house with warmth. Sam found himself looking forward to dinner, not just for the food, but for the conversation that came with it. Rose tells Sam about the book you're reading. Eliza encouraged one evening. Rose launched into a detailed explanation of a tale about knights and dragons, her hands moving as she talked, bringing the story to life. Thomas interrupted frequently with sound effects which should have been annoying, but instead made them all laugh. "Do you like stories, Mr. Sam?" Rose asked. "I do. My wife." He paused, the word still difficult. "Mary used to read aloud in the evenings, said it civilized the wilderness." "Could you read to us?" Thomas asked eagerly. "Mama does voices, but she says her dragon sounds like a sick cow." "It does not," Eliza protested, but she was laughing. That became their pattern dinner, then Sam reading aloud while Eliza mended clothes or worked on her journal, documenting their new life with the same careful attention she'd once used to record Walter's crimes. The children would listen until they dozed. Then Sam would carry them to bed, a ritual that filled an empty space in his chest he'd thought permanently hollow. But not everything was smooth adjustment. 3 days and Doc Miller visited to check on Eliza's pregnancy. The examination was routine until he asked, "How far along?" "About 3 months," Eliza said quietly. Doc Miller, who knew Sam's history, who'd been there the night he'd found his family, just nodded. Baby should come in spring then. New beginnings all around. After he left, Sam found Eliza crying silently in the garden, pulling weeds with violent efficiency. "I hate him," she said without looking up. "Walter's dead and I still hate him. This baby, it's innocent, I know that, but it's also his, and I don't know how to reconcile those things." Sam knelt beside her, not touching, but present. "My mother used to say, babies were blank slates waiting for the world to write on them. This child will know. You know love, know safety. Walter's contribution ends at biology. What if it looks like him? What if I see his face every day in my own child? Then you'll love it anyway because that's who you are. You protected Rose and Thomas from their father while living with him. You'll protect this baby from his memory." She turned to him, then dirt on her hands and tears on her cheeks. "Why are you so good at saying the right thing? Practice at saying the wrong thing for 3 years. Figure I'm due for some wisdom." That got a watery laugh. "Sam, I need you to know this baby raising it. That's my responsibility. You didn't sign on for—" "I signed on for a family," he interrupted gently. "Families come in all shapes. This baby will be born into a home with 2 parent siblings' safety. That's more than many get. You'd claim it, give it your name, if you'll let me." The moment stretched between them, heavy with implication. Then Thomas's voice rang out, "Mr. Sam, there's a snake in the chicken coop." The spell broke. Sam rose, offering Eliza a hand up. "Probably just a rat snake, good for keeping mice away." "Thomas is terrified of snakes." "Then I better go be heroic. Want to watch?" She smiled, wiping her cheeks. "Wouldn't miss it." The snake turned out to be a stick that looked remarkably snake-like in the dim coop. Thomas's relief was so profound that no one teased him about the mistake. That night, he sat closer to Sam during reading time, occasionally leaning against his shoulder. The first real test came at the end of the week. They'd gone to town for supplies, their first appearance as a family. The general store fell silent when they entered conversations, stopping mid-sentence. Mrs. Henderson, the biggest gossip in 3 counties, approached immediately. "Well, Sam Brennan, heard you got married sudden-like." "I did." Sam's tone invited no further questions, but Mrs. Henderson had never met a social boundary she respected. To a widow with children, they say, and her husband barely cold in the ground. Eliza stepped forward, her spine straight. "My late husband died attempting to harm my children. Mr. Brennan protected us. Our marriage ensures my children have a stable home. I'd think Christian folks would celebrate such kindness." The rebuke delivered in Eliza's cultured voice made Mrs. Henderson flush, but it was Rose who ended the confrontation. "Mr. Sam saved us," she announced to the store at large. "He's teaching Thomas to ride, and he reads to us every night, and he doesn't yell even when Thomas spilled molasses all over his boots." "That was an accident," Thomas protested. The tension broke. Mr. Patterson, the store owner, chuckled. "Sounds like Sam's got his hands full. Better add extra molasses to that order." After that, the town seemed to accept them. Not without whispers, not without speculation, but with the general agreement that Sam Brennan deserved some happiness after his tragedy, and those children deserved a father who'd protect them. Walking back to the wagon arms full of supplies, Eliza said quietly, "Thank you for not making excuses, for not explaining more than necessary. Our business is our business. They can make up whatever stories help them sleep." "Mama," Rose said, tugging on Eliza's skirt, "can we get peppermint sticks next time? If you do your lessons without complaining." "I never complain." "You complained yesterday that arithmetic was boring," Thomas reminded her. "That's not complaining, that's stating facts." Sam listened to them bicker good-naturedly, helped them into the wagon, watched Eliza arrange her skirts around her growing belly. This was his family now. Not the one he'd lost, not the one he'd planned, but his nonetheless. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Eliza asked, "Do you regret it?" This choice, Sam considered. "I regret that circumstances made it necessary, but the choice itself, no. Even though I'm difficult and damaged and carrying another man's child. Even though I'm silent and stubborn and see ghosts in every shadow," she smiled. "We're quite a pair. We're surviving. That's more than either of us was doing alone." Thomas ran by, chasing fireflies with a jar, Rose following with careful instructions about air holes. Normal children doing normal things, their laughter mixing with the evening bird songs. "It doesn't feel real sometimes," Eliza admitted. "Peace, safety. I keep waiting for something terrible to happen. Maybe something wonderful will happen instead." "You believe that?" "I'm starting to." That night, after the children were asleep, Sam heard Eliza crying again, soft, muffled sobs from her side of the curtain. He didn't speak, didn't move to comfort her. Some grief needed to be private, but he stayed awake, a guardian presence, until her breathing evened into sleep. In the morning, she emerged with swollen eyes but a determined smile. "Pancakes," she announced. "I'm making pancakes." "Any particular reason?" "It's been exactly 1 week since we married. That deserves pancakes." Rose and Thomas cheered this decision, and Sam found himself smiling as he watched them help mix batter more flour, ending up on them, then in the bowl. "Mr. Sam," Thomas said, his face serious despite the flour in his hair, "I've decided something." "What's that?" "I'm ready to try Papa, just to see how it fits." The word hung in the air like a blessing. Sam's throat closed up, but he managed. "I'd be honored." Thomas nodded, satisfied, then immediately asked, "Papa, can I have extra syrup?" Eliza laughed bright and unexpected, and Sam realized this was how healing happened. Not in grand gestures or profound moments, but in small domesticities. in flour-covered children and burnt pancakes and the gradual replacement of fear with something that might eventually become love. Yes, Sam said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. Yes, son, you can have extra syrup. And in that moment, in a kitchen full of chaos and laughter, 4 broken people began the slow work of becoming whole. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in November, carried by a rider who didn't wait for a response. Eliza stood frozen in the doorway, the paper trembling in her hands, her face draining of color. "What is it?" Sam asked, setting down the harness he'd been mending. "Walter's mother, she's coming here. She's heard about his death, and she wants—" Eliza's voice broke. "She wants to meet her grandchildren." Sam took the letter, scanning the formal script. Mrs. Catherine Crenshaw of St. Louis, a woman of apparent wealth and influence, would arrive within the month to assess the situation regarding her son's estate and offspring. "She has no legal claim," Sam said, though he knew the law could be twisted by those with money to spend. "She has money, connections, and she never approved of me." Eliza sank into a chair, hand pressed to her swelling belly. "Walter used to threaten me with her, said if I ever left, she'd make sure I never saw the children again." Rose, who'd been practicing her letters at the table, looked up with sharp attention. "Is the bad grandmother coming? You remember her?" Eliza asked, surprised. "She visited once. She said I was too wild, and Thomas was too soft. She made you cry." The matter-of-fact recounting from a 7-year-old made Sam's jaw clench. "She won't make anyone cry this time." But Eliza was already spiraling. What if she tries to take them? What if she claims I'm unfit? An unwed mother who got her son killed. "You're not unwed. You're my wife. These are my children, now legally adopted and protected." Sam knelt beside her chair. "We knew something like this might come. We're prepared." "Are we?" Eliza's laugh was bitter. "I'm showing another pregnancy barely 4 months after her son's death. What will that look like?" Before Sam could respond, another voice called from outside. Sam Brennan got visitors. It was Ben Patterson from the general store, and with him was a woman Sam hadn't expected to see. Again, his sister Margaret, all the way from Kansas City. Margaret stepped down from the wagon, her city clothes incongruous against the ranch backdrop, her expression cycling between relief and disapproval. "Samuel James Brennan, you got married and didn't tell your only sister, Maggie." Sam helped her down, noting the gray in her hair, the lines around her eyes. "How did you—" "Doc Miller wrote me. Said you'd done something foolish and noble and probably needed family." She looked past him to where Eliza stood in the doorway, children peeking around her skirts. "You must be Eliza." The two women studied each other, Margaret seeing a young woman bearing the weight of too much too soon, Eliza seeing potential judgment in unfamiliar eyes. "I'm Margaret Sullivan," she said, finally her voice gentling. "And you must be Rose and Thomas. My, what handsome children." Thomas, never one to stand on ceremony, asked immediately, "Are you Papa's sister? Do you have candy?" "Thomas." Eliza scolded, but Margaret laughed. "I do in fact have candy, Boston chocolates, but only for children who help with chores." "We help," Rose assured her. "I gather eggs and Thomas feeds the chickens even though he's scared of the rooster." "I'm not scared, I'm respectfully cautious." The tension broke slightly. Sam helped Margaret with her bags, while Eliza ushered everyone inside her ingrained hospitality, overcoming uncertainty. "You'll stay with us, of course," Eliza said, though Sam could see her calculating sleeping arrangements, meal planning, the added complexity of a witness to their unconventional marriage. "If it's not an imposition, I know this is sudden." Margaret's eyes went to Eliza's obvious pregnancy, but she said nothing. That evening, after the children were in bed, the 3 adults sat around the kitchen table. Margaret had insisted on helping with dinner, establishing herself as family rather than guest, and the shared work had eased some of the awkwardness. "Tell me the truth," Margaret said, her tone brooking no nonsense. This marriage is it what you both want. Sam and Eliza exchanged glances. It's what we both need, Sam said finally. That's not what I asked. It's complicated, Eliza began, but Margaret held up a hand. I know about Walter Crenshaw. Doc Miller told me enough. I'm not judging the necessity. I'm asking about the future. My brother has grieved alone for 3 years. I won't watch him enter another kind of loneliness. I won't hurt him, Eliza said quietly. He saved us. I owe him. Marriage isn't about owing, Margaret interrupted. Trust me, I've been married 23 years. It's about choosing every day to build something together. We're building, Sam said, defensive of Eliza. It may not look conventional. Samuel, your wife, is sleeping on the other side of a curtain. The children call you different names. You're all walking on eggshells around each other's grief. That's not building, that's existing adjacent to each other. Her words hung heavy in the air. Outside, a coyote howled, the sound lonely and wild. What would you have us do? Eliza asked, a challenge in her voice. Fall in love on command. Pretend feelings that aren't there. I'd have you try. Take down that damn curtain for starters. Share space. Share stories. Stop protecting each other from your damage and start healing together. Maggie, Sam started, but she wasn't done. You think Mary would want this for you? This half-life. And you, she turned to Eliza. Those children are watching everything. What are you teaching them about love, about family? Eliza's temper flared. I'm teaching them about survival, about protecting what matters. Good start. Now teach them about thriving. Before anyone could respond, Thomas's voice came from the hallway. Mama, I had a bad dream. The adults all turned to see the boy standing there, tears on his cheeks, his little body shaking. But it was Sam. He ran to Sam's arms. He burrowed into. What did you dream, son? Sam asked, his voice gentle. The bad man came back, but he was different. He was a lady, and she took us away. Eliza went white. Even in sleep, children perceived more than adults realized. No one's taking you away, Sam said firmly. You're safe here. This is your home. Promise. I promise. Margaret watched this exchange, saw how natural Sam was with the boy, how Eliza trusted him with her child's fear. Well, she said softly, maybe you're building more than you know. The next morning, Margaret took charge with the efficiency of a woman used to managing households. First things first, she announced. This house needs preparing for Catherine Crenshaw's visit. You know her, Eliza asked, surprised. By reputation, St. Louis society matron husband made money in shipping. She raised Walter like a prince who could do no wrong. His death will have shattered her world view. All the more reason for her to blame me. All the more reason to present a united front, a happy, stable family she can't find fault with. Margaret surveyed the house critically. We'll need curtains. Proper ones, not that travesty in the bedroom. Fresh paint in the children's rooms. And, Eliza, we're going to town to get you proper clothes. You need to look like a respectable rancher's wife, not a woman in hiding. Appearance matters to women like Catherine. Sam watched his sister transform his household, grateful for her energy, even as he recognized the deeper purpose keeping Eliza too busy to spiral into fear. That afternoon, while the women were in town, Doc Miller visited. He found Sam teaching Thomas to whittle the boy's concentration absolute as he carved what might generously be called a horse. How's the family? Doc asked, his tone casual but eyes keen. Adjusting. Margaret's helping. And the other matter, Catherine Crenshaw. You heard. Everyone's heard. She's been writing to judges, sheriffs, anyone with authority. Doc pulled out a letter. Sheriff Morrison asked me to give you this. Legal papers. She's questioning the validity of your marriage, suggesting undue influence. Sam's hand tightened on his knife. She has no grounds. She has money. Sometimes that's grounds enough. Doc studied him. How far would you go to protect them? As far as necessary. Even if it means making the marriage more than paper. Sam looked at Thomas' tongue poking out as he concentrated on his carving. It's already more than paper. Is it because, from what I see, you're all play acting at family instead of being one? You sound like Margaret. Your sister's a smart woman. Listen to her." Doc stood to leave, then paused. "That baby Eliza's carrying, it'll need a father's name on the birth certificate. It'll have mine. Make sure that's true in more than law, Sam. Children know the difference." That evening, dinner was lively with Margaret regaling them with stories of Sam as a boy. He once tried to ride a pig, she told the delighted children. Thought if he could master that horses would be easy. "Did it work?" Thomas asked eagerly. He ended up face first in the mud with a concussion and a healthy respect for bacon. Even Sam laughed at that, the sound surprising Eliza. She realized she'd rarely heard him truly relaxed, unguarded. "Tell us more," Rose demanded. Margaret obliged, weaving tales that made Sam human, fallible, young. Eliza found herself watching him, seeing past the weathered rancher to the boy who'd been the young man who'd loved completely, the broken soul who was slowly mending. That night, after Margaret had commandeered the children's bedtime routine, Eliza stood at the bedroom doorway. The curtain hung between the two sides like a border between countries. "Your sister's right," she said quietly. "This is ridiculous." The curtain, all of it. The pretense, the careful distance. We're married, Sam. We're raising children together. We should at least be able to share a room without barriers. Sam stood slowly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, take down the curtain. I'm saying let's stop pretending we're strangers. We've seen each other's worst moments, fought together, chosen each other in our own way. That makes us something more than polite acquaintances. And the boundaries you needed. Still need them. But there's a difference between boundaries and walls." She moved into the room, stood beside the curtain. "Help me take this down." Together, they removed the makeshift divider. The room seemed larger without it, but also more intimate. They stood on opposite sides of where it had been the space between them, charged with possibility. "Eliza, I'm not saying, I don't know what I'm saying. Just that maybe your sister's right. Maybe we should try to build something real instead of maintaining something safe. Safe has its merits. Safe is what I had before when I was too scared to leave Walter. Safe is what you had alone here with your ghosts. Safe isn't living." A knock interrupted them. Margaret stood in the doorway, taking in the removed curtain with satisfaction. "Good. Now we need to discuss strategy for Catherine's visit. I've been asking around town. She's already hired a lawyer in Denver." The three of them sat on the bed, the marriage bed, that had never been one, and plotted how to present the family, how to counter legal challenges, how to protect what they'd built. "The most important thing," Margaret said, "is that the children feel secure. Courts listen to children even when they shouldn't. Rose and Thomas need to know this is their home permanently." "How do we ensure that?" Eliza asked. "By making it true," Sam said. "No more Mr. Sam and Mama's friend. I'm their father, legally and practically. You're my wife, same terms. We stop apologizing for how we came together and start being grateful we did." Eliza met his eyes across the bed. "Can we do that? Just decide to be a family." "Families are always decided," Margaret said. "Blood makes relatives. Choice makes family. You've all been choosing each other for weeks now. Time to acknowledge it." Later, after Margaret had retired to the children's room, Rose and Thomas happily camping on the floor, Sam and Eliza prepared for bed with awkward courtesy. No curtain meant they could see each other acknowledge the intimacy of shared space. "This is strange," Eliza said, echoing her words from their first night. "Which part?" Sam responded, the familiar rhythm comfortable. "The part where I'm starting to forget what life was like before this." "Is that bad?" "No, it's terrifying." She lay down, pulling the quilt up. "Sam, what if she takes them? What if all of this isn't enough?" He lay down, too careful to maintain distance, but facing her. "Then we fight. Together. With Margaret's sharp tongue and Doc's influence, and the whole town if necessary. We fight. You do that for children that aren't yours. They are mine. Maybe not by blood, but by choice, by daily choosing, by Thomas calling me Papa and Rose asking my opinion on books and you trusting me with your fears. In the darkness, he heard her crying, soft, trying to muffle it. This time, he reached across the space between them, found her hand. She gripped it like a lifeline. "We're going to be okay," he said, not sure if he believed it, but certain she needed to hear it. "How do you know?" "Because we have to be. Because those children deserve okay. Because you've survived worse, and I've survived worse, and together we're stronger than apart." She squeezed his hand. "Sam, thank you. For all of it. For saving us, marrying us, protecting us. For being who you are. Thank you for reminding me who that is." They fell asleep, holding hands across the divide of the bed, while outside, November wind rattled the windows, and somewhere in the distance, coyotes sang to the rising moon. It wasn't love, yet might never be the passionate romance of youth, but it was partnership. It was choice. It was the beginning of something real. In the morning, they woke to find Thomas had crawled into bed between them sometime in the night, his small body a bridge between their carefully maintained distance. The boy was sprawled out completely at ease, one hand on Sam's arm and his head against Eliza's shoulder. "Look at that," Margaret said from the doorway, coffee in hand. "A family, whether you meant to be or not." And maybe Sam thought, as he watched Eliza smooth Thomas's hair while the boy slept, maybe that was how all the best families happened, not by plan or intention, but by the slow accumulation of shared moments, trusted vulnerabilities, and the choice to stay even when leaving would be easier. Catherine Crenshaw could come with all her money and lawyers. She'd find something here that couldn't be bought or legally dissolved, a family forged by choice and strengthened by challenge, ready to face whatever came next. Together. Catherine Crenshaw arrived on a Thursday afternoon when the sky was the color of old pewter and the air smelled like snow. She came in a private carriage with 2 lawyers, a lady's maid, and enough luggage to suggest a prolonged siege rather than a visit. Sam stood on the porch, Eliza beside him, the children flanking them like small sentinels. Margaret had returned to Kansas City the week before, but not before drilling them all on deportment legal rights and the power of presenting a united front. "Remember," Sam murmured to Eliza, "she's on our territory now." But when Catherine stepped from the carriage, Eliza's breath caught. The woman looked like Walter, same sharp cheekbones, same calculating eyes, but aged and refined into something harder. She wore black silk that probably cost more than the ranch made in a year, and her gaze swept over them all like she was cataloging assets. "Eliza." The name came out like an accusation. "You look, well." The pause before "well" was deliberate, her eyes fixing on Eliza's obvious pregnancy with undisguised disgust. "Mrs. Crenshaw." Eliza's voice stayed steady, though Sam felt her trembling beside him. "May I present my husband, Samuel Brennan, the man who killed my son." Catherine's tone was conversational, as if discussing weather. "The man who protected my family from an attacker," Sam corrected. "Your son died as he lived, Mrs. Crenshaw, violently." The lawyer, a thin man with nervous hands, intervened. "Perhaps we should conduct this discussion inside. I'm Mr. Pembridge, representing Mrs. Crenshaw's interests." They moved to the parlor, the children trying to disappear into furniture while staying close to their parents. Thomas had Sam's hand in a death grip, while Rose pressed against Eliza's side. "These are my grandchildren," Catherine said, studying them like specimens. "Rose, you've grown. Do you remember me?" "Yes, ma'am," Rose said quietly. "You visited when I was 5. You said I laughed too loud." Proper young ladies moderate their voices. "And you must be Thomas." She examined the boy. "You have your father's eyes." "I have Mama's eyes," Thomas said firmly. "Papa says so." "Your papa is dead." No, he's right here. Thomas pointed at Sam. My other father is gone. Mama says we don't talk about him because he was mean. Catherine's face tightened. Your mother has filled your head with lies. That's enough, Sam said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd commanded soldiers. You asked to visit. Visit. But you won't upset these children with false histories. False, my son. Beat his wife, terrorized his children, hunted them like animals when they fled. Sam pulled out Walter's journal, which they'd kept as evidence. His own words, Mrs. Crenshaw. Would you like me to read some passages? The one about breaking Eliza's ribs while she was pregnant with Thomas is particularly illuminating. The lawyer reached for the journal, but Sam held it back. This stays with us. Copies have been made and distributed to several trusted parties. Catherine stood pacing to the window. That journal is stolen property, like the money she took, like the children she kidnapped. A mother cannot kidnap her own children, Eliza said, finding her voice. And the money was from selling my mother's jewelry, which Walter had no right to. You have no proof of that. Actually, Sam said, producing papers from his desk, we do. Bill of sale from Henderson's jewelry dated 3 days before Eliza fled. Testimony from Mr. Henderson that she sold her mother's ring and necklace. All legal, all documented. Pembridge examined the papers, whispered something to Catherine. Her jaw tightened further. Fine, but the children are legally adopted by me, Sam continued. Judge Morrison signed the papers 2 weeks ago. They're Brennan's now with all the protection that name provides. A hasty marriage and suspicious adoption, any good lawyer would need grounds. Abandonment, Eliza never left them. Unfitness, she protected them from abuse. Moral turpitude, Sam's laugh was dark. A pregnant widow remarrying to provide stability for her children is hardly scandalous despite what your son did to her. Catherine whirled on them. You didn't wait even a month. My son's body was barely cold. Your son's body was still trying to kill my children when he died, Eliza said, standing to, her hand protective over her belly. This baby I carry, yes, it's his, the last piece of him in this world, and it will never ever know what its father was. It will know Sam as Papa know love. Instead of fear, know that hands are for helping, not hurting. You can't erase him. Watch me. Eliza's voice was steel. I will burn every picture, forget every anniversary, never speak his name in this house. He gave me 2 beautiful children and years of nightmares. The children I keep. The nightmares die with his memory. Rose suddenly stood small but fierce. Grandmother, why are you here? You never liked us before. You said Thomas was weak, and I was unmannered. Why do you want us now? Catherine turned to the girl, and for a moment her composure cracked. You're my blood, my legacy. We're people, Rose said, not things to own. Papa Sam taught us that. He says we belong to ourselves and choose to belong to each other. He's not your... He is. Thomas interrupted, moving to stand by his sister. He teaches me things. He reads to us. He never hits. He's our papa now. You can't change that by being mean to Mama. The children's simple loyalty seemed to break something in Catherine. She sank into a chair, suddenly looking her age. He was my only child, she said quietly. My son. I know he was difficult, but he was mine. And these are mine, Eliza said gentler now. I'm sorry for your loss, Catherine. No mother should lose a child, but I won't let you take mine to fill that void. What about the baby? Catherine asked. My son's last child will be born a Brennan, raised a Brennan. Sam has agreed. Insisted, Sam corrected. This child will have my name, my protection, my love, if it will accept it. Biology doesn't make a father. Choice does. Pembridge cleared his throat. Mrs. Crenshaw, legally they're correct. The adoption is solid, the marriage valid, unless you can prove unfitness or danger to the children. Look at them, Sam said. Fed, clothed, educated, loved. Look at this home, warm, safe, stable. Is your grief worth destroying that? Catherine studied them all, Eliza proud. Despite her fear, Sam solid as the mountains, the children brave in their small defiance. Then she looked at the journal in Sam's hands. What else does it say? That journal, Sam hesitated, then opened it. Do you really want to know? I need to. He read selectively enough to show Walter's cruelty without the worst details. Catherine's face went white, then gray. When he finished, she was crying silently. I failed him, she said. His father was harsh, and I compensated by indulging. Every cruelty dismissed, every violence excused. I created the monster he became. He made his choices, Eliza said. We all do. Catherine stood, slowly aged, a decade in an hour. Mr. Pembridge, we're leaving. But, madam, the custody petition is withdrawn, all of it. She moved toward the door, then paused. The baby, when it's born, could you send word? Not to interfere, just to know. Eliza looked at Sam, who nodded slightly. We can do that. And perhaps when they're older, if they choose, the children might visit Summers, maybe to know where their father came from, even if they choose to reject it. If they choose, Eliza emphasized, when they're old enough to choose, and only with supervision. Fair. Catherine moved to leave, then turned back. Rose Thomas, I was wrong before. You're not too loud or too soft. You're brave, braver than I ever was. Be good for your parents. She left then, her entourage scrambling to follow. The house felt lighter the moment the door closed, as if a storm had passed without breaking windows. Thomas threw himself at Sam. We won, Papa, we won. We did, Sam agreed, lifting the boy. Family won. Rose hugged Eliza, carefully mindful of the baby. Mama, you were so brave. You didn't cry or anything. I was terrified, Eliza admitted. But sometimes brave is being scared and standing up anyway. Like when I fell off the horse but got back on, Thomas asked. Exactly like that. That night, after the children were asleep, exhausted from emotional upheaval, Sam and Eliza sat on the porch despite the cold. The threatened snow had started gentle flakes that made the world soft and quiet. She could have fought harder, Eliza said, with her money, her connections. But she saw the truth. Whatever else she is, she's a mother. She recognized what was best for them, even if it hurt her. Sam, what you did in there, claiming the baby so firmly. I meant it, every word. He turned to her. That child deserves to come into the world, wanted, claimed, named. I can give it that. You're giving us so much. What are you getting in return? A family, purpose. The sound of children laughing in my house again. He paused. And maybe something more in time. She looked at him in the dim light. Sam, I'm not pushing, not asking for anything you're not ready to give. But Eliza, these weeks building this together, I care for you, not just as someone to protect, but as you. Your strength, your humor, the way you hum when you're happy and don't think anyone's listening. You hear that? I hear everything. The house has been silent for 3 years. Now it's full of sound, and most of it comes from you. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I care for you too. More than I expected. More than I thought I could after Walter. But I'm still so broken, Sam. Still healing. We both are. Maybe that's why this works. We understand broken. We're patient with it. She surprised him by scooting closer, leaning against his shoulder. The baby's moving. Want to feel. He placed his hand where she guided, felt the flutter of life beneath his palm. New life, unmarked by the violence that had preceded it. What should we name it? He asked. It's going to be mine. Remember, I should have some say. She smiled. If it's a girl, maybe Grace, for the grace that brought us together. And a boy, James, she said softly, after your son. If that's not too painful. Sam's throat closed. That would be good. Full circle. They sat like that, his hand on her belly, her head on his shoulder, snow falling around them like benediction. Inside, 2 children slept safe and warm. The threat that had loomed for weeks had passed, turned aside by truth and solidarity. "We're really doing this," Eliza said. "Being a family. We really are. It's terrifying. The best things usually are." A few days later, the first blizzard of winter hit, trapping them inside for 3 days. What could have been claustrophobic became cozy. Sam taught Thomas checkers while Eliza and Rose baked bread. They read stories by the fire, played charades that left them all laughing, built a fort from blankets that took over the entire parlor. On the second night, the power of the storm knocked loose a shutter banging against the house. Sam went to fix it, but the wind was too strong. He came back inside soaked and freezing. "Leave it," Eliza said, helping him out of his wet coat. "It's just noise. It'll damage the window." "Then we'll fix the window. You don't have to solve every problem immediately, Sam. Some things can wait for calmer weather." It was a simple statement, but somehow profound. He'd been fixing, protecting, solving since they'd arrived. Maybe it was okay to just be even with imperfection battering at the windows. That night, Thomas had another nightmare, but this time when he crawled into their bed, he said, "I dreamed about the good things, about staying here forever. But then I woke up scared it wasn't real." "It's real," Sam assured him. "We're real. Promise. I promise." The boy settled between them, and Eliza reached across him to take Sam's hand. "He's right, you know. Sometimes I wake up scared it's not real either. What convinces you it is this," she said, squeezing his hand. "The way you're always here, solid, true, my anchor in all this strangeness." "You're mine too," he admitted. "I was drifting before you came. Now I have direction again." The storm raged outside, but inside they were warm, safe together. A family not by blood, but by choice, by daily choosing, by weathering storms, both literal and metaphorical. When morning came, the world was transformed white and pristine. All sharp edges softened, all scars covered. They ventured out together, the children shrieking with joy at the snow, Sam and Eliza watching with the satisfaction of parents who'd protected their young from more than just weather. "Papa helped me build a snowman," Thomas called. "Mama, can we make snow angels?" Rose asked. They spent the morning playing the shadow of Catherine's visit finally lifting. When they went inside, pink-cheeked and laughing, Eliza made hot cocoa while Sam stoked the fire. "This is what I wanted," she said suddenly. "When I was young, dreaming of family, this exact moment, safety and sweetness and ordinary joy. You have it now." "We have it," she corrected. "We made this together." And they had. From desperate beginning through threatened ending, they'd built something worth protecting. The crisis had passed, but it had done more than just remove a threat. It had cemented, them transformed a marriage of convenience into a union of choice. The baby moved again, and Sam felt it against his back, where Eliza leaned while they watched the children play. New life growing in the shelter of chosen love, proof that sometimes the best families are the ones you build from the broken pieces of what came before. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it brought more than just wildflowers and warm winds. It brought new life in ways none of them had anticipated. Eliza woke on an April morning to soaked sheets and the particular pain that meant the baby was coming. She reached across the bed for Sam, finding his side empty but still warm. Through the window, she could see him in the garden with the children Thomas attempting to plant seeds in somewhat straight rows, while Rose read instructions from the almanac. "Sam." She called, her voice steady despite the contraction building. "Sam, it's time." He looked up, and even from a distance, she could see understanding dawn on his face. He said something to the children, who immediately abandoned their planting and ran toward the house. "Mama's having the baby," Thomas shouted, bursting through the door with more excitement than worry. Papa says I'm in charge of boiling water. You're in charge of staying calm, Sam corrected, following them in. He moved to Eliza's side, his hands gentle as he helped her sit up. How far apart? Maybe 10 minutes. It's moving fast. She gripped his hand through another contraction. Sam, what if... No what ifs. Doc Miller's already on his way. Margaret's coming from town. Everything's prepared. They'd been planning for weeks, knowing the baby could come any time. But plans and reality were different things, and Eliza found herself afraid in ways she hadn't expected. The last time, she whispered, with Thomas Walter wouldn't let me scream. Said it was undignified. I bit through my lip trying to stay quiet. Scream all you want, Sam said firmly. Break windows if you need to. This is your birth your way. Doc Miller arrived within the hour, Margaret close behind. They took over with practiced efficiency, sending Sam and the children to wait in the kitchen. But Eliza caught Sam's hand before he left. Stay, she said. Please, I know it's not conventional, but convention hasn't exactly been our pattern, Sam said, settling beside the bed. I'm not going anywhere. What followed were the longest and shortest hours of Sam's life. Eliza was fierce in her laboring, no longer the frightened woman who'd arrived in a storm, but a force of nature herself. She squeezed his hand hard enough to leave bruises, swore creatively enough to make Doc Miller chuckle, and when the pain was worst, she locked eyes with Sam and found strength there. You're doing amazing, he told her, wiping sweat from her forehead. So strong, so brave. I'm terrified, she admitted between contractions. Brave isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling fear and pushing through anyway, literally in this case. That made her laugh, which turned into another contraction, which turned into the final push that brought the baby into the world. It's a girl, Doc Miller announced, and the baby's cry filled the room strong, healthy, alive. Sam watched Eliza's face transform as the baby was placed on her chest. Wonder, relief, and something else, a checking, a searching of the tiny features. She looks like Rose did, Eliza whispered, nothing of him in her face. She looks like herself, Sam said, touching the baby's impossibly small fingers. Perfect and new, and herself. Grace, Eliza said. Grace Margaret Brennan, after the grace that saved us, and the sister who helped us heal. Margaret, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, wiped away tears. That's lovely, dear. They brought the children in once Eliza was settled and the baby cleaned. Rose approached carefully, like the baby might break. Thomas was less cautious, immediately asking if the baby could play checkers yet. She has to learn to hold things first, Rose informed him with big sister authority. Babies are basically useless for months. Rose, Eliza scolded, but she was smiling. It's true, but we'll teach her everything. Reading and writing and how to know when Papa's pretending to be grumpy, but is really happy. I don't pretend to be grumpy, Sam protested. You do, Thomas said. Yesterday with the chickens. You were grumbling, but smiling. That's because the chickens are ridiculous but useful, like certain small boys I know. Thomas giggled, then asked, "Can I hold her?" They arranged him in the big chair, carefully placing Grace in his arms with Sam supporting them both. The boy looked down at his sister with wonder. She's so small. Were we this small? Smaller, Eliza said. You were early, remember, barely bigger than Papa's hands. But I grew strong, Thomas said proudly. I'll teach Grace to be strong too. And I'll teach her to be smart, Rose added, and to read people know who's safe and who's not. It was a sobering reminder of what these children had learned too young, but Sam saw it differently. You'll teach her to be careful and brave, smart and strong. Everything you both are. That evening, after Margaret had cooked a celebratory dinner and Doc Miller had checked everyone, once more the family gathered in the main room. Grace slept in a cradle Sam had built the same style as the one he'd made for James, but somehow different, this one carved with wild flowers instead of horses, hope instead of dreams. I have something to say, Eliza announced. She stood by the fireplace, still pale from the birth, but determined. 6 months ago, I arrived here broken and running. I thought I was saving my children, but really, we were all saved. By Sam's kindness, by Margaret's wisdom, by this community that accepted us. She moved to stand beside Sam's chair. I married you for protection, for convenience, for survival. But somewhere between that first night and now it became something else. Something real. Sam stood facing her. Eliza, let me finish. I know we're not a conventional family. I know we came together from necessity, not romance. But Sam Brennan, you've shown me that love isn't always lightning strikes and poetry. Sometimes it's patient kindness, daily choosing quiet strength. Sometimes it's a man claiming another man's children and child as his own without hesitation. She took his hands. I fell in love with you somewhere between teaching Thomas to ride and reading to Rose at night. Somewhere between removing that curtain and facing down Catherine Crenshaw. I love you, not desperately or dramatically, but deeply, truly. Is that okay? Sam pulled her close, mindful of her still healing body. It's more than okay. It's miraculous, because I love you too. Have for weeks, maybe months, was just waiting for the right moment to say it. And you chose now, when I'm exhausted and leaking milk and probably look terrible. You look like hope, he said simply, like spring after the longest winter, like home. They kissed, then gentle and sure, while the children made exaggerated gagging noises that turned into giggles. Does this mean you're really married now? Rose asked. Not just pretend married. We were always really married, Eliza said. But now we're choosing it with our hearts, not just our heads. Good, Thomas said decisively, because Grace needs real parents, not confused ones. Margaret laughed. Out of the mouths of babes. Now, who wants cake? The next weeks were a blur of adjustment. Grace was an easy baby, as if understanding she'd been born into a family that had seen enough difficulty. She slept well, ate well, and studied the world with eyes that gradually settled into the same green as roses. Sam took to fatherhood with an ease that surprised him. The midnight feedings, the walking and rocking the tiny clothes, and endless diapers, none of it felt like burden. It felt like redemption, a second chance he'd never expected. One morning he was changing Grace when she grabbed his finger, her grip surprisingly strong. That's right, he told her. Hold on tight. Don't let go. She knows you're safe, Eliza said from the doorway. Babies can tell. All I did was change a diaper. All you did was claim her before she was born, protect her family, give her your name, and now care for her like she's the most precious thing in the world. She is. You all are. Eliza moved to him, wrapped her arms around his waist from behind. We're having a proper wedding. We're already married. A celebration then. For the town, for us, for the children to remember. Margaret's right. We built this family backwards, but we built it strong. Let's celebrate that. They held the celebration on a Sunday in May when the wildflowers were blooming and the air smelled like possibility. The whole town came bringing food and music and genuine joy for a family that had found each other in the most unlikely way. Sheriff Morrison, who'd married them the first time in haste and legal necessity, performed a blessing this time. What was joined by circumstance, he said, is now bound by choice. What was born from protection has grown into love. Rose was Eliza's flower girl, taking her role seriously, scattering petals with mathematical precision. Thomas carried the rings they'd bought, simple silver bands to replace the makeshift ones from before. Grace in Sam's arms cooed at appropriate moments as if offering her blessing. Do you, Samuel Brennan, choose this woman and these children, not from duty, but from love? I do. Every day I do. Do you, Eliza Brennan, choose this man and this family, not from necessity, but from joy? I do. With my whole heart, I do. When they kissed, the crowd cheered, but it was Thomas's voice that carried clearest. Finally, now can we eat cake? The party lasted until sunset, with dancing and storytelling and the kind of laughter that heals old wounds. Sam watched Eliza dance with each of the children, saw how the townspeople had fully embraced them, saw the life they'd built from the ashes of their separate tragedies. Doc Miller found him as the evening wound down. "You did good, Sam. Mary would be proud." "I hope so." "I know so. You didn't replace what you lost, that's impossible. But you built something new, something worthy. It wasn't just me. Eliza is remarkable, but so are you. You both had the courage to try again, to risk again. That's the hardest kind of brave." As the last guest departed, the family sat on the porch, watching stars emerge. Thomas had fallen asleep against Sam's shoulder. Grace was nursing quietly in Eliza's arms, and Rose was writing in her journal by lamplight. "What are you writing?" Eliza asked. "Our story, so Grace knows how we became a family. So none of us forget." "What will you call it?" Rose thought for a moment. "The story of choosing, because that's what we all did. We chose each other." "That's perfect," Sam said. "Read it to us," Eliza suggested. "The beginning, at least." Rose cleared her throat and began. "Once upon a time there was a broken family and a lonely man. They found each other in a storm and decided to become whole together. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't simple, but it was right. This is their story. Our story of how choosing to love can heal any wound, bridge any distance, and create miracles from ordinary moments." She looked up. "Is that okay?" "It's perfect," Eliza said, tears streaming down her face. "Absolutely perfect." That night, as they prepared for bed in the room that had once been divided by a curtain and was now united in purpose, Eliza said, "We did it. We actually did it. Built a family from nothing." "Not from nothing," Sam corrected, pulling her close. "From hope, from courage, from the choice to try again." "I love you," she said, simple and true. "I love you too. All of you. Forever." Outside, an owl called, and somewhere in the distance, coyotes sang their ancient songs. But inside the house, all was quiet, except for the breathing of children and the soft whisper of wind through the windows. A family complete, chosen, and choosing proof that sometimes the best endings are actually beginnings in disguise. The ranch prospered that year. The garden Eliza had planted flourished, the cattle Sam raised fetched good prices, and the children grew like the wildflowers, beautiful and resilient. Grace learned to crawl in the same kitchen where her mother had once stood, frightened and desperate. Now the kitchen rang with laughter, filled with the smell of bread and the sound of family. They were not perfect. Sam still woke, sometimes haunted by old ghosts. Eliza still flinched at unexpected sounds. The children still occasionally asked about the time before the scary time, but they faced these shadows together with patience and understanding and the unshakable conviction that they had chosen right in choosing each other. One evening, as summer turned toward autumn, they sat together on the porch Sam had built wider to accommodate their growing family. Thomas was teaching Grace to clap. Rose was reading aloud from her journal, and Sam and Eliza sat close, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. "So happy it scares me sometimes," she admitted. "Like it's too good to last." "It'll last. We've already survived the worst. Everything else is just life." "Our life," she corrected. "Our beautiful, chosen, imperfect, perfect life." And it was. 5 years later, on another spring morning with the same kind of pristine clarity that had welcomed Grace into the world, the Brennan Ranch hummed with preparation. Today wasn't just any gathering, it was the dedication of the new schoolhouse built on the corner of Sam's land, and the whole valley was coming to celebrate. Rose, now 12 and serious beyond her years, stood before the mirror in her parents' room, adjusting the ribbon in her hair for the 10th time. "Mama, do I look like a teacher?"
Eliza, wrestling a squirming Grace into her Sunday dress, smiled. "You look like a young lady with a bright future. Teaching will come when you're ready." Mrs. Patterson says I could start helping with the little ones next year. Assistant teaching, she calls it.
Because you're brilliant, Sam said from the doorway. Baby John balanced on his hip. Their son-theirs together had arrived 2 years after Grace completing their family in ways they hadn't known they needed. He had Sam's steady eyes and Eliza's determined chin, a combination that promised interesting times ahead. "Papa, you're biased," Rose said, but she was smiling. "Guilty as charged. Now come on, or we'll be late to our own celebration." Thomas, now 10 and tall for his age, was already outside helping Doc Miller arrange the benches they'd borrowed from the church. He moved with Sam's same quiet efficiency, had developed the same way of seeing what needed doing without being asked. "Thomas," Sam called, "make sure the platform's steady. Your mother's giving a speech." "I'm not giving a speech," Eliza protested, finally succeeding in buttoning Grace's dress. "I'm just saying a few words about education and opportunity and how communities thrive when they invest in their children," Sam teased. "Sounds like a speech to me." She swatted him playfully, and he caught her hand, pulled her close for a quick kiss that made Grace giggle and cover her eyes. "Ew, Papa and Mama are being mushy again." "Get used to it, little one," Sam said, scooping her up with his free arm. "Mushy is what makes families strong." The schoolhouse stood proud against the morning sky, its white walls bright with fresh paint windows positioned to catch the best light. It had been a community effort, Sam donating the land, the townspeople contributing materials and labor, everyone understanding that their children deserve better than the long ride to town for education. Margaret had come from Kansas City for the event, bringing her husband Daniel, this time a quiet man, who watched the chaos of the Brennan family with bemused affection. She stood with Eliza as the crowds gathered, her eyes soft with pride. "Look what you've built," she said. "Not just the school, all of it." "We built it," Eliza corrected. "The whole community." "You know what I mean. 5 years ago, you were running for your life. Now you're the beating heart of this valley." It was true in its way. Eliza had become the person neighbors came to for advice, for comfort, for practical help. She'd organized the women's auxiliary that had raised funds for the school, started a lending library from her own books, taught several local wives to read. Sam had become the man others looked to for leadership, fair judgment, steady wisdom. Sheriff Morrison called for attention, and the crowd quieted. "Before we dedicate this building, I think we need to hear from the folks who made it possible. Sam, Eliza, come on up here." They climbed the small platform together, their children arranging themselves in front. Rose trying to look dignified, Thomas fighting the urge to wave at his friends, Grace spinning in her dress, and John reaching for everything in sight from Sam's arms. Sam spoke first, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "When my Mary was alive, she used to say that education was the great equalizer, that a child with books and knowledge could overcome any circumstance. We build this school in that spirit, not just as a place for learning letters and numbers, but as a foundation for dreams." He paused, looking at his family. "My own children are proof of what's possible when you give young ones the tools to build their futures." Rose reads everything she can get her hands on and asks questions that make me think harder than I have in years. Thomas can calculate lumber needs in his head and knows every plant in the valley by name. Grace tells stories that would make professional writers jealous. And John. Well, John mostly eats dirt still, but we have hopes. The crowd laughed, and Sam continued, "This school is our investment in tomorrow. Every child who learns here, who discovers what they're capable of here, makes our whole community stronger." He stepped back, and Eliza moved forward. She'd changed so much from the desperate woman who'd arrived in a storm. Now she stood tall, confident, her voice clear and strong. 5 years ago, I believed safety was all I could hope for. That survival was the best my children could expect. But this community showed me that surviving isn't enough. We deserve to thrive. Our children deserve to dream without limits to become whatever their hearts and minds can imagine. She found Catherine Crenshaw in the crowd. The older woman had started visiting, yearly building careful relationships with her grandchildren. Their eyes met, and Catherine nodded a gesture of support and understanding. This school represents second chances, Eliza continued. The chance to learn to grow, to become more than our circumstances. Every child who walks through those doors will know they matter, that their thoughts and dreams have value. That's the world we're building, one classroom, one child, one lesson at a time. Rose tugged on her mother's skirt. Tell them about the library. Eliza smiled. My daughter reminds me we're also establishing a lending library in the school. Books donated from families throughout the valley, free for any child to borrow. Because stories like education should belong to everyone. The applause was warm and sustained. As they stepped down, Reverend Mills offered the blessing, officially dedicating the building. Then the real celebration began, tables groaning with food, children running everywhere, music from the handful of musicians who'd brought instruments. Sam found himself standing with Doc Miller and Sheriff Morrison watching the festivities. Never thought I'd see this place so alive, the sheriff said. You've done good, Sam. We all have. No false modesty, Doc insisted. You and Eliza brought something back to this valley. Hope, maybe, or just the reminder that broken things can be mended. Thomas ran up breathless with excitement. Papa, Mr. Henderson says I can help with the store inventory this summer, learn the business side of things. Can I? If you keep up with your studies and your chores here. I will, I promise. He ran off again, and Sam felt that familiar chest-tightening sensation of pride and love mixed together. He's going to be something, Morrison observed. That boy's got your steadiness and his mother's fire. Dangerous combination. The best kind of dangerous, Sam agreed. As the afternoon wore on, Sam found himself on the porch of the new school, John sleeping against his shoulder, watching his family integrate seamlessly with the community. Rose was helping serve food, grown up and responsible. Thomas was in a cluster of boys animated about something. Grace had organized the younger children into some elaborate game only she understood the rules to. And Eliza. Eliza was radiant. She moved through the crowd like she'd been born to it, comfortable in her skin in a way that had taken years to achieve. When she caught him watching, she made her way over, settling beside him on the bench. Penny, for your thoughts. Just thinking about that first night, the storm. How certain I was that my life was set in stone, lonely, purposeless, just existing until existing stopped. And now I can't imagine any other life. Can't imagine not having you, the children, all of it. She leaned into him, careful not to wake John. Remember when you offered to teach me to shoot better, to fight? I remember. You did, but not the way either of us expected. You taught me to fight for happiness instead of just against fear, to build instead of just defend. You taught me the same. That surviving isn't living, that protecting isn't the same as loving, that families are made by choice and strengthened by choosing again every day. Grace ran up her dress, dirt-stained and hair wild. Mama, Papa, come see the Murphy twins are going to play fiddle and everyone's going to dance. They followed her John, waking enough to demand to walk on his own 2-year-old legs. The dancing was chaotic and joyful, couples spinning, while children darted between them. Sam and Eliza joined in him spinning her until she laughed breathless, the years falling away, until they were just two people who'd found each other against all odds. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold, and rose, Reverend Mills called for attention once more. Before we end this glorious day, I think we need to acknowledge something. 5 years ago, this community witnessed something special. 2 broken families becoming one whole one. Sam and Eliza Brennan showed us that love isn't always about perfect beginnings. Sometimes it's about choosing to begin again, no matter how imperfect the circumstances. He raised his glass of cider to second chances, to chosen families, to the courage to rebuild after loss, and to the Brennans who remind us daily that the best things in life are worth fighting for. The toast was echoed throughout the crowd, and Sam felt Eliza's hand slip into his. "We did it," she whispered. "We really did it." "Did what?" "Made it to the other side. Found our happy ending." "Not ending," Sam corrected, squeezing her hand. "Beginning. This is all still beginning." Later that night, after the crowds had dispersed and the children were asleep, Sam and Eliza sat on their porch, the same porch where she'd first sought shelter, where they'd made impossible decisions, where they'd slowly fallen in love. "Read me what you wrote," Sam said, "in your journal today." Eliza pulled out the leather book, filled now with years of entries. She found today's page, May 15th, 1889. "Today we dedicated the school. Today our community came together to celebrate education, opportunity, future. But really, we celebrated redemption, the proof that people can change, can heal, can find love after loss and hope after despair. I watch my children, our children, and see them free in ways I never dreamed possible. Free to be loud, to make mistakes, to dream big dreams. Rose talks about college back east. Thomas wants to build things that last. Grace believes she can be anything. John toddles through life certain of his safety and place in the world. This is what we built from the ashes of our separate tragedies. This is what choosing love, choosing family, choosing hope can create. Sam likes to say we saved each other, but I think it's more than that. We showed each other that saving is possible, that broken doesn't mean worthless, that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. To anyone who reads this someday, our children, their children's strangers who need to hear it, know this. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to choose love. It's never too late to build something beautiful from something broken. We are living proof. She closed the journal, looked at Sam. Too sentimental. Perfect. Like you. Like this life we've built. Our life. She corrected the same words she'd used years ago, but now filled with certainty instead of wonder. Our life, he agreed. They sat together as the moon rose full and bright, illuminating the land that had become their sanctuary. In the distance, coyotes called, but the sound no longer seemed lonely. It seemed like celebration, like the wild world acknowledging that sometimes, against all odds, humans get it right. Inside the house, their children slept peaceful and safe. The new school stood ready for tomorrow's lessons. The garden grew, the ranch prospered, the community thrived. But more than any of that, two people who'd thought love was behind them sat together in comfortable silence, proof that the best love stories aren't always about lightning strikes and passion. Sometimes they're about two people choosing to heal together, to build together, to wake up every morning and choose each other again. "I love you," Eliza said into the quiet night. "I love you too," Sam replied. "Forever and for always. Even when I'm difficult, especially then. Even when the children are chaos. That's when I love you most." She laughed, the sound floating out across the valley like a blessing. Somewhere perhaps other broken souls heard it and thought maybe, just maybe, they too could find their way to wholeness. The mockingbird that had taken up residence in the oak tree began its night song, not as warning now, but as joy. Its melody mixed with the whisper of wind through grass, the distant low of cattle, the creak of the rocking chair as Sam pulled Eliza closer. This was their happily ever after, not perfect, but real. Not without challenges, but with the strength to meet them. Not the life either had planned, but the life they'd chosen, fought for, and won. And in the end, that made it more precious than any fairy tale, because this was true, earned theirs. Forever and for always. The end. Total word count, approximately 24,500 words.